Chapter 2465. However, in Lin Yi's eyes, the common housie's position had obviously dropped a lot. They weren't as mysterious as before, so the value of this map was naturally lowered by Lin Yi. This was also why Lin Yi kept them in the drawer to collect dust and didn't study them. But now that this map had appeared beside the skeleton of a Sky-class late-phase peak master, it proved that this map still had some value. A Sky-class late-phase peak master didn't bring anything else, but a map was enough to prove this point. No matter what, there was no reason for Lin Yi to let go of such a good thing. Although he didn't know what these two things could be used for, Lin Yi still decided to keep them. What conditions do you have? Lin Yi looked at the thing and asked. Promise me first or not. The thing said. If you don't say anything, how can I promise? Lin Yi frowned. If you want me to die, would I still die? That won't be possible. The conditions that I've set out will guarantee that all of you will be able to leave safely. You won't have to pay anything, and it won't cause any substantial harm or loss to you. The ghostly thing said, Moreover, it's just a piece of cake for you. Now that you put it like that, I'm a little confused. What conditions are you talking about? Tell me. Lin Yi was very puzzled. Why was this thing stuttering? Why couldn't it just say the conditions? This is very important. You have to promise me first before I can say it. The thing said firmly. Okay. Lin Yi was a little helpless. If it's really as you said, and your conditions are really nothing, and it won't cause any harm or loss to me and my friends, then I can promise you. But if it's not as you said, then the promise is invalid. Lin Yi was a person who took promises seriously, and he didn't easily promise things to others. And if he promised, he would find a way to do it. Since this darn thing wanted Lin Yi to guarantee first, Lin Yi naturally added such an additional condition. Haha, how refreshing. The ghostly thing laughed and suddenly pounced on Lin Yi. You. Lin Yi turned pale with fright. He was just about to condense his pill fire to fight against this ghostly thing, but he hadn't condensed his pill fire yet. Thus, a huge change occurred. What happened next caused Lin Yi to be indescribably horrified. After the ghostly thing rushed towards Lin Yi, it suddenly shrank into a straight line and entered Lin Yi's body. Lin Yi's first thought was that he had been possessed. However, even though he was shocked, he didn't notice anything strange. He was still himself. Even his thoughts had not changed. It seemed that he had not been possessed. However, where did that damn thing go? If he didn't possess me, then why did he disappear after entering my body? Just as Lin Yi was in shock, suddenly the ghostly thing's voice was heard again. Thank you very much. I can't thank you enough for your kindness. I will definitely repay you in the future. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect this. Lin Yi was slightly stunned, but then his expression changed. Because the way this ghostly thing spoke was the same as the way he and Jiao Lao conversed. It was transmitted directly to the mind through thoughts, and this ghostly thing was doing the same now. Didn't that mean? Did it run into my jade pendant? Thinking of this, Lin Yi suddenly turned pale with fright. He subconsciously entered the space of the jade pendant, but when he saw it, he was immediately dumbfounded. At this moment, that ghostly thing seemed to be enjoying itself, staying in the space of the jade pendant. Although it only occupied a small corner, in Lin Yi's eyes, it was so dazzling, stimulating Lin Yi's nerves. This is my jade pendant. How did this thing come in? Since when can my jade pendant allow strangers to enter and leave freely? What the hell is going on? How did you come in? What do you want to do? Asked Lin Yi in shock. Haha, this place is much better than that girl. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect this. I'm going to sleep here first. You don't have to care about me. Just pretend that I don't exist in the future. The ghostly thing said excitedly. When I wake up, I will give you benefits. You want to live here for a long time? The corner of Lin Yi's mouth twitched twice. And didn't you agree to my conditions? It's just a little effort from you, and it won't cause harm or influence to you and your friends. I did what I said. The ghostly thing said. Lin Yi didn't know what to say. Well, I'm going to sleep. Goodbye. With that said, the ghostly thing didn't wait for Lin Yi to answer. It shrunk into a small ball and hid in the corner of the space of the jade pendant. Hey, you wait first. Linny didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You're occupying my territory now. Why don't you explain how you came in? There was no sound. The ghostly thing really did what it said and went to sleep directly. Lin Yi's words were equivalent to saying nothing. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. He didn't know what to say because it was useless. Sighing helplessly, Lin Yi turned to look at Zhao Yazi and said, Zhao Lao, what did it do? How did it come in? How would I know? It came in just like that. Zhao Yazi shook his head. This space is yours, not mine. I'm just an avatar of my primordial spirit. Primordial spirit? You're also a primordial spirit? Lin Yi was stunned and asked. It seems so, but I'm not too sure. I've already said that a lot of my memories haven't been unlocked. So, there are a lot of things that I can't explain. Zhao Yazi said, however, it's obvious that this thing can come in because you instructed it. As for how you instructed it, I'm not too sure, but it doesn't matter. It shouldn't have any malice towards you. Lin Yi nodded. If this ghostly thing had malice towards him, it wouldn't have waited until now. Moreover, it had always been easy to discuss with him. This made Lin Yi slightly relieved. Everything would have to wait until this ghostly thing woke up. Well, I don't know when it will wake up. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. This space hasn't been condensed yet, but it already came in. It's really strange. It's in the form of a primordial spirit. It's different from ordinary things. In fact, it's also your primordial spirit that entered the space. Your body is actually still in the outside world. Zhao Yazi explained. So that's how it is. Lin Yi was a little surprised. I also have a primordial spirit? Isn't it only after reaching a certain level that one can cultivate a primordial spirit? Your mental cultivation method is special. Zhao Yazi said. The school bell's personal expert, text. Welcome readers to log in. Read the full text. Chapter 2466. Chapter 2472. Secret Service. They were all shocked. Then, if I accidentally die, can my primordial spirit be preserved? Lin Yi asked. I don't know. You can try, but you won't be able to live if you die, Zhao Yazi said. Lin Yi was speechless. Huh? Where am I? Lin Yi heard Xinyan's surprised voice all of a sudden. Lin Yi hurriedly came out of the jade pendant space, but he saw a completely different scene. The barren village was still the same barren village. The skeleton on the ground was still there, and the small bag that Lin Yi emptied was still there. However, the scene behind him had completely changed. Not far away, Han Jingjing, right coiling tiger, Xiaolong, yellow hair and purple hair were all there, and they could faintly see the lights of the expedition car in the distance. This place had completely returned to normal, and it was no longer a hallucinatory state. Xinyan, on the other hand, was looking around with a confused expression on her face. She let out a breath of relief when she saw Lin Yi standing right beside her. Xinyan, are you all right? Lin Yi hurriedly asked. I'm fine. Xinyan shook her head, a little confused. Lin Yi, I remember getting off the car, but I don't remember anything after that. How did we end up so far away? Why are there skulls on the ground? Xinyan was a medical student after all. She was a little scared by the skull, but not to the point where her legs went weak. It's okay. We encountered a ghost wall and couldn't get out. Now everything is over. Lin Yi said, let's go. Let's go back. Wall hitting ghosts. Xinyan's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't remember anything from before, and it seemed like nothing good had happened. And haha, but it's nothing. It's all in the past now. Lin Yi didn't want to explain too much to Xinyan, in case she overthought things. After all, Xinyan had lost her mind before, and she didn't feel much of the horror. All right. Xinyan nodded, not wanting to stay in this damned place. Han Jingjing and the others were also very surprised. Previously, they saw Lin Yi walking away and suddenly disappeared. Now they could see Lin Yi again. They were a little surprised. Lin Yi and Xinyan walked over. Xiaolong was still sitting on the ground, his face still ashen. Right Coiling Tiger, on the other hand, was looking at the sudden change in scenery with a bit of surprise and confusion. Where's that ghost? Yupan who glanced at Lin Yi. He was scared away by me. Lin Yi was unwilling to explain further. He could not tell Pan who about the jade pendant. In fact, until now, Lin Yi still hadn't recovered from the shock. The jade pendant had always been his biggest secret. Other than himself, only Jiao Yazi knew about it. How did this damn thing know? It was a little unbelievable. The scariest thing was that it could enter and live there. Lin Yi felt very helpless. Scared away? Yupan who blinked. You scared it away. Yeah, that thing was scared of the core fire. It ran away as soon as I started the core fire. You could have scared it away too, Lin Yi said. Then why didn't you say so earlier? Yupan who was speechless. He wouldn't have been so scared if he'd known earlier. I didn't test it out earlier, Lin Yi said. All right, let's go back. Your purple-haired follower should be dead soon, right?
He's fine.
I gave him a small recovery pill. His wounds are all external, and he'll be fine after we control it. Yupan who answered Lin Yi honestly. The situation before had scared him to death. If it wasn't for Lin Yi, they might not have been able to walk out alive. Plus, Old Man Yu had told them that Lin Yi could hurt even Sky-class masters. Yupan who was very afraid of him. Xinyan sis, are you okay? Han Jingjing looked at Xinyan up and down. A little surprised, Xinyan didn't look scared at all. It seemed that there was some kind of inside story behind this. I'm fine. Xinyan smiled. She was indeed the least frightened of the group, and hadn't seen the thing from the very beginning. She only woke up when the thing entered Lin Yi's jade. Oh, that's good then. Han Jingjing nodded. Xiaolong got up from the ground and looked at Lin Yi and Xinyan in silence. He blushed a little awkwardly. It was his idea to get out of the car and explore this place, but he was the first one to be scared out of his wits. It was Lin Yi, the one he'd been mocking all this time, who was the first one to rush in when Xinyan was in trouble. It was obvious who was the stronger one here, and Xiaolong was embarrassed. He didn't dare act cool in front of Lin Yi anymore. The group walked in the direction of the adventure car in silence. Suddenly, a skull flew towards Xiaolong from the sky. Xiaolong had just been scared out of his wits, and even though Lin Yi said that he scared the ghost away, Xiaolong still hadn't recovered from his shock. Suddenly, a skull came flying at him, scaring him out of his wits. Aha! Xinyan had been walking beside Lin Yi with her head down when she heard Xiaolong scream. She jumped in fright and looked up to see the skull flying towards them. Ah! She subconsciously jumped into Lin Yi's arms. Lin Yi, on the other hand, wasn't scared. He wasn't scared of that thing that was beyond Sky class, so why would he be scared of a flying skull? But with a beauty in his arms, Lin Yi was naturally happy to let nature take its course. He hugged Xinyan and said, "Don't be scared, it'll be fine." Meow. A cat's cry broke everyone's fear. When the skull came closer, Xiaolong saw that it wasn't a freaking flying skull at all. It was clearly a cat that had somehow managed to push the skull of a skeleton onto its head from who knows where. However, this cat's color was black, so it wasn't particularly clear in the dark. It couldn't be seen from a distance. Chapter 2467. Xiaolong's face darkened. He didn't want to mess with Lin Yi right now, but Lin Yi hugging Xinyan right in front of him wasn't something he could accept. But it was his own fault for mistaking the black cat for a skull, scaring everyone. That was why Xinyan jumped into Lin Yi's arms, and why Lin Yi could take advantage of the situation. He couldn't blame anyone else for that. But Xiaolong still said sourly, "Lin Yi, you don't look that brave. A skull scared you." "Oh, the skull didn't scare me. It was your scream that scared me," Lin Yi said faintly. "Don't you know there's a saying that scaring people can scare people to death?" With that, Lin Yi picked up the black cat from the ground. He didn't know when this skull was put on the cat's head, but the upper half of the skull was almost dead on the cat's head. It was obvious that this cat had been wearing this skull since it was young. In that case, the unclean thing that the tourists saw here was most likely this black cat. After all, this ghost that surpassed Sky class didn't have the time to scare the tourists. It couldn't even train itself. It would only come out to scare people away if they accidentally entered its territory. The other routes, in theory, didn't see ghosts, so it was most likely this black cat. Xiaolong didn't think that his sarcasm towards Lin Yi would result in him getting outsmarted by Lin Yi. He wasn't happy, but there was nothing he could do. They walked back to the car, only to find that the door was closed. Lin Yi went up and knocked on the door. "Who is it? Who is it?" The driver was very scared in the car, and he didn't dare look far. He clearly saw that Lin Yi and the others didn't go far, but they disappeared in an instant. It wasn't hard to imagine how scared he was. The car was out of gas and couldn't move forward. He could only lie in the car and wait for the sun to rise. He didn't dare look around, in case he saw something unclean. He didn't care if Lin Yi and the others lived or died. If they died, then so be it. He could just say that Lin Yi and the others didn't listen and got off the car without permission. The resort wouldn't take too much responsibility. The driver was about to fall asleep when he heard a knock on the car door. His scalp went numb, and his heart raced. Was it a ghost? Lin Yi was pissed off at the driver's words. This guy was obviously sent by that idiot Su to mess with them. If it wasn't for the fact that he was an elixir refiner and made an agreement with that damn thing, they would have all died here today. Xiaolong didn't know that this place was dangerous. It was understandable for him to encourage everyone to get off the car. After all, he thought that the barren village was just a tourist attraction. If he knew how scary it was, he probably wouldn't have come down himself. This driver, on the other hand, had no regard for human life. Xinyan had almost died, so there was no way Lin Yi would let this driver go so easily. At that thought, Lin Yi picked up the black cat in his hand and stuck it on the window of the driver's seat. The driver was terrified, but he could only suppress his fear and raise his head to see what was going on. But when he raised his head, the driver's eyes widened and his mouth dropped wide open. He saw a skull outside the driver's window. Moreover, within the skull, there was a pair of glowing green eyes staring at him. Oh my god. #####% Ghost. The driver screamed in terror and lay on the steering wheel, not moving an inch. Lin Yi put the cat down casually, and under the shocked gazes of the others, he pushed the door open and got into the car. Lin Yi, why are you scaring him? Who's going to drive if you scare him to death? Xiaolong frowned, not understanding Lin Yi's actions. There's no gas in this car. He won't be able to drive even if he's alive, Lin Yi said faintly. Ah. No gas? Xiaolong blinked. Isn't it broken? He told Xiaolong and Right Coiling Tiger about what happened and harumphed. Isn't this all your fault? Xiaolong was a little embarrassed, but he still defended himself. If I didn't stand up for him, you would have stood up for him when he was harassing Xinyan. How can you blame this on me? If I stood up for him, that idiot Su would have turned into an idiot. I wouldn't have given him the chance. Lin Yi glanced at Right Coiling Tiger faintly. I'm sure Coiling Tiger knows this very well. There's a blue-haired guy in his house, and I blew his brain up with pure energy. You Coiling Tiger shivered involuntarily, forcing a smile. All right, Lin Yi, what's done is done. Kong Bro was just being nice. He's not as strong as you, so it's good enough that he could do this. Xiaolong, on the other hand, felt a little awkward. He turned around to check if the car was really out of gas. When he saw the driver, he realized that the driver had no heartbeat. Lin Yi, he's scared to death. Oh, so what if he's dead? Lin Yi said nonchalantly. Lin Yi didn't need to hide anything in front of Xiaolong and Right Coiling Tiger. There were too many people related to House Kong and House Yu that had been crippled or killed by Lin Yi, so there was no need to hide anything. There weren't any other students present anyway. Wang Xinyan and Han Jingjing were people that Lin Yi trusted, so he wasn't worried that they'd tell anyone. The corner of Xiaolong's mouth twitched. Indeed, the driver of the exploration car was dead, and he deserved it. Xiaolong was actually quite happy about it. It was a relief to him. He'd been holding back a lot of anger before, and when he found out that he was tricked by the driver, he felt even more depressed. Now that Lin Yi had helped him vent his anger, it was the same as helping him vent his anger. Then, what do we do now? We can't just stay here forever, can we? Xiaolong's interest had waned. He thought that Lin Yi was afraid of ghosts, but Lin Yi wasn't afraid at all. He'd made a fool out of himself, so naturally, he didn't want to stay here any longer. But before Lin Yi could say anything, his phone rang. Lin Yi took out his phone and looked at the caller ID. He picked it up immediately. Hello, Mr. Bai. Latest update, please. Chapter 2468. Cultivators Market. Lin Yi, where are you guys? How come I can't see your car? We've already visited the village, but you're nowhere to be seen. Where's that car? Boss Bai's nervous heart finally relaxed after hearing Lin Yi's voice. Everything was fine. Mr. Bai, I was just about to call you. We've run into some trouble here. Lin Yi started lying through his teeth. Earlier, the driver of our car seemed to be possessed. He drove the car onto a small road, and it wasn't the same road as the car in front of us. After that, the car stopped for no reason, and the driver screamed. Then, there was no more movement. We just checked, and it seems like the driver is dead. What? The driver is dead? Boss Bai was shocked. How did he die? I think he was scared to death. Lin Yi said. Did he see something scary? How are you guys? Are you guys okay? Boss Bai quickly asked. We're okay, but we don't know where we are, and we don't dare to act recklessly. Lin Yi said. Alright, don't move yet. I'll look for the people from the resort. This car seems to have a GPS system. Boss Bai said. Alright. Lin Yi nodded. Lin Yi hung up. Xiaolong and Tiger Right hesitated, but didn't say anything. They weren't interested in exposing Lin Yi for scaring the driver to death. This was something the driver deserved, and to them, if they were to say anything bad to Lin Yi, they'd probably be the next ones to die. After Boss Bai hung up the phone, he immediately found the security team of the resort. When Captain Sun of the security team heard that the driver of the exploration car was scared to death, he was also shocked and turned to look at Days Su. Days Su wanted to scare Xiaolong and Tiger Right, but he didn't expect the driver to be dead as well. His face paled. Although he couldn't be held responsible for this matter, the exploration car driver had died while serving the resort. The resort would at least have to compensate a large sum of money. At that time, his uncle would definitely scold him. Thinking of this, Days Su didn't reflect on his wrongdoings. Instead, he shifted his hatred onto Xiaolong and Tiger Right. Of course, he hated Lin Yi and Xinyan, who were in the same car. He had to take revenge. But now, it couldn't be realized for the time being. He had to think of a way to calm things down quickly. If the news of the resort scaring someone to death were to spread, who would come here to play? The matter was resolved quickly, and the resort used the GPS to locate Lin Yi and the others. They then sent another car to pick them up. The whole process was quick, and the body of the driver was taken away. What happened next had nothing to do with Lin Yi and the others. As for whether or not the resort would pay the driver's family a large sum of money, that was unknown. After returning to the resort, Han Jingjing and Xinyan were exhausted. Lin Yi hadn't fully recovered yet, so they went to bed early. Bai Weitua, on the other hand, didn't come back until the middle of the night. Lin Yi and the others were in trouble, but it didn't bother the other students. After all, they didn't experience it themselves. Lin Yi and the others had returned safely, so they went to play. They didn't come back until the early hours of the morning. They went skiing the next day, but Lin Yi, Xinyan, and Han Jingjing weren't as excited. They only went for a walk, and Tiger Yu and Xiaolong didn't even change their skis. They weren't in a good mood either. In the afternoon, everyone took the bus back to school. The winter outing was officially over. On the way back, it could be said to be smooth sailing. There were no car accidents or robberies. Soon, they arrived at the school. At the same time, Lin Yi received some good news. It made him feel better, but it was unrealistic to say that he wasn't depressed at all. That thing was residing in Lin Yi's jade. Lin Yi couldn't chase it away, nor could he communicate with it. He could only ignore it for now. Most importantly, Lin Yi couldn't ask others about this strange thing. He couldn't ask Old Pai or Faubert, because the secret of the jade couldn't be easily revealed to others. When Lin Yi returned to school, He received a call from Han Xiaopa. Boss, I have good news, Han Xiaopa said directly after the call connected. Oh, what good news? Lin Yi's heart tightened. In the middle of this month, there will be a practitioner's market in the nearby Mount Elephant Heart, Han Xiaopa said. Han Xiaopa said, although the scale isn't large, with only a few loose practitioners and reclusive family members participating, these people might have good stuff in their hands. Who knows, they might even have the materials you need, boss. Oh, that's great. Lin Yi had been looking forward to the cultivator's market for a long time. He had Han Jingjing make so many small qi gathering pills in preparation for the cultivator's market. Lin Yi also had a bunch of random things he had won from the Hidden Houses Summit, so he could trade them for things he needed in the market. Boss, if you're going to participate, I'll tell the organizer to reserve 2 spots, Han Xiaopa said. Of course I'm going, Lin Yi said. But is there anything I need in the market? Hard to say, but I heard there's pure topaz for sale, Han Xiaopa said. Aside from me, other people need pure topaz? Lin Yi couldn't help but be surprised. I'm not sure, but it's said that when heaven-class masters temper their weapons, they use some good jade, and pure topaz is one of them. Of course, it's not the only one, so if boss needs it, it's not hard to get it. After all, not every heaven-class master needs this kind of pure topaz, Han Xiaopa explained. Han Xiaopa explained. During this period of time, he had been listening to these things. He had already learned about the uses of pure topaz, colored steel, and blue crystal powder. So that's how it is. Lin Yi nodded. Then tell me, what price do I need to pay to get pure topaz? That's hard to say. It depends on how much pure topaz there is and what the person wants. If they don't need a material urgently, they just need to trade something of a higher value. If someone needs a material urgently, even if the material's value is lower than pure topaz, they'll still trade, Han Xiaopa said. Chapter 2469. Shu's Plan. What I have in my hands are the things we got from the Hidden House Summit, as well as some pills. Are these enough? More or less. The people who went this time were all solo practitioners, and there were also some guests or elders from the hidden houses and small sections. These people aren't that knowledgeable. Boss, these things you have are good stuff, Han Xiaopa said after some thought. Han Xiaopa thought for a moment and said, but just in case, it's best to prepare 1 or 2 especially valuable items in case of emergencies. Something really valuable? Lin Yi frowned. What did he have that was really valuable? He wasn't a disciple of some hidden house or sect, and he didn't have their resources. Lin Yi couldn't think of anything. It's hard to say. Some people need this, some people need that. I'll bring some good stuff too, but I don't know if they'll be of help to you. Han Xiaopa was speaking the truth. Everyone had their own favorites. If the good stuff in your eyes wasn't useful to the practitioner, then the practitioner wouldn't trade it with you. Okay, I'll prepare. Lin Yi nodded. After saying goodbye to Xinyan, Bai Weituo, and the others, Lin Yi and Han Jingjing drove back to the villa in the Xueshang district. He'd just parked the car when he saw 2 beautiful figures in the yard. Yao Yao, Shu, why are you guys here? Lin Yi asked as he got out of the car. It's snowing, and Shu told me to build a snowman. Meng Yao smiled when she saw Lin Yi. You're back? Yeah, I'm back. Lin Yi nodded and was about to say something when a snowball came flying at him. Lin Yi dodged it and smiled bitterly. Shu, you still use hidden weapons? Man, it's boring. Shield bro, can't you just dodge? It's so boring. Yushu wanted to hit Lin Yi's head with a snowball, but she didn't expect Lin Yi to react so quickly. Then I'll stand here, and you can start again? Lin Yi laughed. Forget it. Shield bro, help us build a snowman. Yushu said as she bent down and started sweeping the snow from the corner of the yard. Before you came, Shu and I would build snowmen in the yard every winter when it snowed. Meng Yao explained with a smile, there's someone from the management company clearing the snow outside, but we have to clear the snow inside ourselves. Shu and I made snowmen out of it. Lin Yi nodded, a little wistful. He'd been with Meng Yao and Yushu for almost a year in the blink of an eye. It was already the end of the year, and spring hadn't even started when he'd first arrived. Jingjing, you want to come too? Yushu asked after some hesitation. Sure. Han Jingjing agreed happily. And so, the four of them started building a snowman in the yard. There wasn't much snow in the yard, so it didn't take long for the four of them to finish. The three entered the villa together. Lin Yi went to cook, while Meng Yao, Yushu, and Han Jingjing chatted in the living room. Getting Han Jingjing on her side was something Yushu thought of on the spur of the moment. Wang Xinyan seemed to have something she couldn't say. Yushu could tell that Wang Xinyan liked Lin Yi, but she rejected Lin Yi and didn't tell Meng Yao the truth over the phone. Everyone had their own secrets. Yushu, who always liked to gossip, surprisingly didn't try to pry. She was the same as Wang Xinyan, having a secret that she couldn't divulge. She liked Lin Yi too, and she liked living in this villa. But she knew that one day, all of this would no longer belong to her. The hidden house Yu's strength, to be honest, was like a mountain in front of Lin Yi. But now, Lin Yi's strength after the meeting of the hidden houses showed that he was on par with the hidden house Yu. Especially now that Lin Yi had broken through to Earth-class mid-phase peak, House Yu would have to think twice before making a move on Lin Yi. Under this situation, Yushu knew that if she begged Lin Yi to save her parents, it wouldn't be too hard. At least, House Yu didn't want to openly go against Lin Yi. This could be seen from the fact that they didn't send masters to assassinate Lin Yi, instead using poison to assassinate him. They didn't want to have a direct confrontation with Lin Yi. At least, they didn't have a high chance of winning. So if Lin Yi failed to get Yushu's parents, Lin Yi and the hidden house Yu would completely fall out. If the hidden house Yu is just a hidden house Yu, it wouldn't matter, but Yushu knew that behind the hidden house Yu, there was an extremely powerful backer. When Yushu was young, Elder Yu had once let slip that his backer didn't even put the ancient sex in his eyes. Just what kind of existence was that? So, Yushu could only bury her worries and pain in her heart. She knew how strong Lin Yi was. Although Yushu seemed to be a troublemaker and would often cause trouble for Lin Yi, in reality, Yushu never messed with people that she couldn't afford to mess with. This was also her cleverness. She would rather suffer than bring trouble to Lin Yi. Lin Yi didn't even have the strength to take down the hidden house, not to mention the ancient sex. Even if Lin Yi could stand on equal footing with the ancient sex, he might not be able to go against the hidden house Yu. So, Yushu could only choose to accept it quietly and do her best to stay by Lin Yi's side. She could only muddle through the days with the warmth. Maybe one day, this warmth would leave her. She had pulled Han Jingjing over with the intention of replacing her. Yushu had chosen Xinyan because she wasn't a scheming person. Even if she moved into the villa, she wouldn't fight with Meng Yao for Meng Yao's favor. She wouldn't start an internal war. Han Jingjing, on the other hand, Yushu just couldn't see through her. This girl looked cute, but Yushu didn't think that was the case at all. If she was the genius Shu, then she was the genius Jing. Things like scientific alchemy weren't something a normal person could come up with. As a result, Yushu felt that under Han Jingjing's cute and adorable appearance, there was a girl with an IQ similar to her own, and a mind that was no less scheming than hers. A person like that, if they were on good terms with Meng Yao, would protect her and even help her out with some small problems. But if she wanted to fight with Meng Yao wouldn't be her match. Chapter 20. 470. Eating one meal less meal. However, Yushu had no other choice. After the two accidents failed, Yushu knew that although she was still staying in the villa, it wasn't long before she left. She had to arrange things after she left. Since Xinyan couldn't do it, Yushu could only choose Han Jingjing as her successor. Based on her observations, Han Jingjing didn't hold anything back towards Lin Yi. She even shared things like concocting pills with Lin Yi. It was evident that Han Jingjing didn't have any intentions of hiding anything from Lin Yi. As long as Han Jingjing was sincere towards Lin Yi, with Lin Yi around, Meng Yao wouldn't be at a disadvantage. So, this was Yushu's last resort. Someone had to accompany Meng Yao after she left, or else Meng Yao would be sad. After Lin Yi finished cooking, he realized that Han Jingjing and Yushu were chatting passionately about Big Wolf and Red Wolf. This made Lin Yi's eyes flash. Han Jingjing, have you seen Happy Goat and Big Wolf before? Every time Lin Yi went to look for her, she was always calculating something. He didn't see her watching TV at all. It was strange that she was chatting passionately with Yushu now. However, Mengyao didn't really participate in the discussion. She wasn't a talkative person. She only interjected once in a while. "Time to eat," Linny said. "Yay, yay." Shu loves Shield Bros cooking the most. "Every meal is one less meal," Yushu said as she stood up and ran towards the dining room. Eating one meal less, but Yushu's words made Lin Yi's heart sink. He had a bad feeling about this. He couldn't help but remember Shu's strange behavior that night. Although Shu said that she had taken care of everything, Lin Yi still felt uneasy. "Jing Jing, don't laugh at me. Shu's always like that, acting crazy all the time." Mengyao shrugged helplessly as she explained to Han Jingjing. "It's fine." Han Jingjing shook her head as a trace of confusion flashed in her eyes. She looked at Yushu thoughtfully before pulling a chair over and sitting beside her. How could Han Jingjing not sense Yushu's goodwill? But Han Jingjing didn't understand why Yushu would do that. Yushu's attitude towards her had been good, but she hadn't taken the initiative to get close to her. They were just good friends who were classmates and neighbors. Yushu's tone and actions today, however, were clearly different. How could Han Jingjing not be surprised? Lin Yi had been cooking in the kitchen and didn't have the habit of eavesdropping. Naturally, he didn't know what the three of them were talking about. "Big brother Lin Yi, why is your cooking so good? Jingjing wouldn't be able to cook something this good." Han Jingjing's words were subconsciously elevating Lin Yi's status. "Hee. Jingjing, do you want to eat it all the time? Actually, you can move in too," Yushu said with a smile. "This villa is big. One more person won't make much of a difference." Lin Yi frowned, but didn't say anything. He didn't say anything, but Mengyao, on the other hand, looked at Yushu oddly. Yushu rarely invited her love rivals to stay in the villa, and although she'd accepted Tang Yun, Xiao Xiao, and Xinyan, she seemed to have accepted Han Jingjing all of a sudden. Mengyao was surprised. "Thanks, but my brother's at home. It's not good to leave him alone." Han Jingjing didn't agree immediately. This outcome surprised Yushu. Yushu was a little surprised. Xinyan probably had her own reasons, but Han Jingjing didn't seem to have any such concerns. What was the reason then? The atmosphere during the meal was pretty good, but everyone had their own thoughts. Han Jingjing went back to rest, Mengyao and Yushu went upstairs, and Lin Yi went back to his room to practice the art of dragon mastery. The days went on as usual. Shu didn't do anything weird, but Lin Yi could tell that something was up from how she was trying her best to get Han Jingjing closer. But Lin Yi didn't stop her. Han Jingjing had long since been listed as one of Lin Yi's trustworthy people. She knew a lot of Lin Yi's secrets, and Lin Yi knew some of hers as well. The two of them worked together seamlessly, and naturally, Lin Yi wanted Mengyao and Yushu to have a good relationship with her. Right, Coiling Tiger and Kong Xiaolong seemed to have become a lot more depressed. Ever since the winter outing, the two of them didn't hang around Lin Yi, Xinyan, and Han Jingjing anymore. They went to class after class, ate, and left. Although Coiling Tiger wanted to continue interacting with Han Jingjing, he was afraid of Lin Yi's methods. A person's reputation was like a tree's shadow. When Coiling Tiger returned home and saw with his own eyes the Earth Class Late Phase Peak Master killed by Lin Yi and the Sky Class Early Phase Master injured by Lin Yi, Coiling Tiger fell silent. It was too easy for Lin Yi to kill him, and the only reason why he didn't was because they were classmates. Right, Coiling Tiger didn't think that Lin Yi was afraid of him. Before House Yu carried the banner of the Sky Elixir sect, he believed that Lin Yi wasn't afraid of the hidden House Yu. This could be seen from the fact that Lin Yi didn't show any mercy. But although the hidden House Yu had the Sky Elixir sect as their backer, it was just a backer. Your backer was to deter your opponents, not to be your fighters. If someone suffered a loss, the Heavenly Elixir School would not intervene unless it was a great loss that would affect the interests of the school. Otherwise, the Heavenly Elixir School would not come to the secular world at will because of the death of a few of their disciples. Not to mention the restrictions of the other ancient sects, even the place behind the Sky Elixir sect wouldn't allow them to go out and cause trouble at this critical moment. The opportunity to go to Sky Class Island was obviously too much for them. Everyone wanted to get a piece of the pie. Which Sky Class Late Phase Peak Master didn't want to go one step further? Not to mention them, Even the Sky-class late-phase masters didn't want to let go of this opportunity. Although the ancient sects had agreed a long time ago that the final list of people to go to Sky-class Island would be decided at the Sky-class meeting, in order to be fair, they would follow the previous agreement and give some chances to the hidden houses, small sects, and lone practitioners. At that time, there were special conditions for this opportunity. But even so, even if there were some conditions, the competition was still in full swing. None of the ancient sects wanted to let go of this opportunity. Think about it, which Sky-class late-phase peak master would give up so easily? So, at this time, any sect that sent out a problem would become the target of public criticism. Although the Sky Elixir sect was powerful and overbearing, they didn't dare to violate the hard and fast rules of the agreement. Chapter 2476 _ School Bells Bodyguard Free Reading _ Chapter 2476 1 Meal Less. 1 Meal Less. Chapter 2471. Meeting Yang Chichi again. Ancient sects didn't meddle in the affairs of the common world. This was a rule that had been agreed upon for many years. As a result, all the ancient sects liked to use hidden houses as their spokespersons, not common houses or people from the common world. They were afraid of being accused of meddling in the common world. However, Pan Hu and Jialong's depression, in Lin Yi's eyes, was only temporary. Once this period passed, they'd jump out again. In truth, Lin Yi really didn't know what to do with them. With Boss Bai's rules, Lin Yi couldn't do anything to his classmates. He just hoped that they wouldn't cross the line. In the blink of an eye, it was the day of the practitioner's market. Han Xiaopa drove to Lin Yi's villa early in the morning. It didn't take long to get to the practitioner's market, and Lin Yi didn't have to do much. He just had Qintian come back and take over as his bodyguard, taking Meng Yao, Yu Shu, Han Jingjing, and Han Xiaoqiao to school. As for the hidden house Pai, they were just staying here temporarily. Now that things were over, Elder Pai brought Pai Zhishan and Pai Zhihai back to the hidden house. Although the hidden house Yu and house Yu had tested them, and the hidden house council only existed in name, the hidden house Pai still didn't dare stay in the common world for long. Even if Lin Yi was strong, the founder of the hidden house council was even stronger. Boss, let's go. Did you bring everything? Han Xiaopa asked as he got off the car. Yeah, that's all. Lin Yi pointed at his backpack. Lin Yi didn't have much on him. Other than the things he won from the Hidden House Summit, Lin Yi still had some pills Han Jingjing made. The most valuable thing he had was the ice crystal turtle spit he got from the lake in the valley, but Lin Yi didn't know how much it was worth. From how much the Sky-class turtle valued it, it must be very valuable. Then let's go. Han Xiaopa nodded and gestured for Lin Yi to get in the car. Elephant Heart Mountain was located between East Ocean City and Songshan City. That was because it was surrounded by mountains. Mount Elephant Heart was one of them. However, Mount Elephant Heart was very remote, and there were no tourist attractions on the mountain, so it was rarely visited. When Han Xiaopa arrived at the foot of Elephant Heart Mountain, he found that it was very crowded. In an open space at the foot of the mountain, luxury cars gathered. There were Mercedes-Benz, BMWs, Land Rovers, Rolls-Royce, Bentley, and other top luxury cars. There were also many sports cars. This situation made Lin Yi secretly click his tongue. It seemed that these cultivators were very rich. On the other hand, Han Xiaopa was driving a Mercedes-Benz, which was considered ordinary here. However, these luxury cars did not have license plates. Instead, it was replaced by a special pass that was stuck on the original license plate. Han Xiaopa's car was naturally stuck on it before going up the mountain. It represented the cars that came to participate in the cultivator market. It was also to prevent cars that didn't know the truth from affecting the privacy and normal transactions of the market. Han Xiaopa seemed to have noticed Lin Yi's surprise, so he smiled and said, "How can there be poor cultivators? Even these guest elders and disciples are affiliated with the hidden families and sects, so they have a lot of money every month. As for those independent cultivators, they are basically the guards of some rich bosses, and their treatment is not bad." I see. Lin Yi nodded and put on the masks with Han Xiaopa. Then they got out of the car together. People who came to participate in the cultivators' market square would usually mask their faces or disguise themselves. This was a custom that had been formed in the cultivators' market for many years. It wasn't a requirement of the market square's organizers, but these people who participated in the cultivators' market were afraid of showing their true faces to others. After the transaction, there would be people robbing them. After all, everyone who came here was to trade treasures. If someone targeted them, there would be endless trouble. This was also to keep their identity secret. Of course, there were some who thought highly of themselves, such as Earth-class late-phase peak and Sky-class early-phase experts, but they didn't wear masks. These people's strength was there for all to see, and they were usually the top figures in this kind of small market. Naturally, they weren't afraid of people having any ideas about them. As for cultivators of higher levels, they might not be interested in the things that these Earth-rank cultivators were trading. Lin Yi and Han Xiaopa's appearance didn't attract much attention, because the two were too ordinary. The car they drove was low-key, and the masks made it hard to tell who was who. On the other hand, Lin Yi looked at the cultivators who came to participate in the market. Most of them were Mystic class and Earth class early phase masters. As for Earth class late phase masters and above, there weren't many. Sky class Lin Yi didn't see any of these people. Lin Yi was still wearing the male thief's mask, but under it was a layer of the 1,000 silk mask that the Sky-class spider gave him. The purpose of this was double insurance. In case the mask fell off, his identity wouldn't be exposed. There were all sorts of people in this practitioner market, and Lin Yi didn't want too much attention on him. After getting off the car, Lin Yi followed Han Xiaopa to the foot of the mountain. It didn't take long before they saw a group of people gathered around to watch the show. Lin Yi wasn't a person who liked to watch crowds. He glanced at them faintly and wanted to go around them. But Han Xiaopa said, "Boss, let's go take a look. Maybe there's something good." Lin Yi's footsteps paused for a moment, but he nodded. Han Xiaopa was right. Usually Lin Yi wouldn't go watch the show. But here, if Han Xiaopa said there was something good, then it might be true. And so, Lin Yi decided to go with Han Xiaopa. But when Lin Yi's eyes fell on the two people in the center of the scene, he couldn't help but frown. One of them was someone Lin Yi didn't know or care about, but the other one was someone Lin Yi had a deep impression of. Wasn't that young Chi-Chi? Chi-Chi was wearing a black mask, but that black leather jacket and pants and that cold, murderous expression. Lin Yi recognized her right away. Naturally, Lin Yi had a deep impression of someone he was familiar with, especially this young Chi-Chi. Whether it was that time in Songshan or the time in Blue Town or even a time in the Ice Palace test, she had left a deep impression on Lin Yi. Others might not be able to recognize her, but Lin Yi could with one look. And this cool girl seemed to be a punching bag. Chapter 2477 The Campus Belle's Bodyguard is free to read. Meet Yang Chi-Chi update complete. Chapter 2472 She'd been bullied in the Ice Palace test, and now she was being bullied here as well? Looking at her, it seemed like she'd been taken advantage of. She wasn't hurt, but she was panting heavily. The other person was a skinny man with a green mask on. He was an Earth-class early phase. He was looking at Chi-Chi arrogantly. "Girl, if you know what's good for you, hand it over. We'll trade fairly. Don't be so shameless." "You put it nicely, fair trade. Let's not talk about whether or not what you're trading is worth as much as mine. I don't want to trade with you, and you want to force me to sell? Do you really think you're the only one in this market?" Chi-Chi glared at the skinny man. "You've gone too far. Girl, you don't understand the situation, do you? Of course, you can't force someone to buy or sell in the market, but outside the market, fists do the talking." The skinny man chuckled, not caring at all about Chi-Chi's anger. He wasn't ashamed but proud. "If your fists are bigger, you can take my stuff back." "You..." Chi-Chi's chest heaved. She was pissed, but she knew that she wasn't a match for this person. She was a mystic late phase peak physical practitioner, and this man was an Earth class early phase, a spiritual practitioner at that. She wasn't a match for him. In fact, Chi-Chi knew that she wasn't a match for him the moment he tried to steal her stuff. Just one palm strike was enough to make her suffer. An Earth class that knew how to use their techniques was different. They weren't on the same level as a mystic. Chi-Chi's forte was lightness kung fu, too. Her level was there, but she wasn't good at fighting. If they were to really fight, Chi-Chi would definitely be at a disadvantage. This was also why Chi-Chi didn't dare to make a move even though she was angry and angry. But no matter how weak Chi-Chi was, the people watching from the side were just watching, and no one was going to help. They could see that Chi-Chi was being bullied, but no one wanted to cause trouble at a time like this. Lin Yi frowned and hesitated.
Should he help or not?
Lin Yi didn't want to cause any trouble. He just wanted to exchange for what he needed. After exchanging, he would leave immediately. He didn't want to complicate matters. Yang Chi-Chi, on the other hand, was someone Lin Yi was familiar with. She might have bitten the hand that fed her, but Lin Yi had seen her body, and they'd worked together back in the Ice Palace trial. Just as Lin Yi was hesitating, the skinny man spoke again. What are you all looking at? All of you, disperse for this daddy. Do you still want to stand up for this girl? As soon as the skinny man spoke, the onlookers subconsciously took 2 steps back. Obviously, this skinny man had some power. Although his face was covered, there were definitely people who recognized him. Or rather, he was a tyrant in the market, doing things like this all the time. It was just that most people didn't dare say anything about it. Those who got bullied were usually pushovers, and no one would stand up for them even if they got bullied. The stronger practitioners didn't care about this sort of thing either. It was a very normal thing in the world of practitioners. Chi-Chi gritted her teeth, almost crying. It hadn't been easy for her to find out the location of the market. She'd signed up and brought her treasures to trade for some medicine to keep little Gio's sickness. She didn't think that her treasures would be taken away before she even entered the market. It was her fault for being inexperienced. She was afraid that she'd lose out later on, so she'd taken her treasures out for others to evaluate before entering the market. That was how the skinny man had his eyes on her. Chi-Chi didn't think that the market would be this chaotic. She'd heard that the market was fair and just, and people could reject if they didn't want to trade. Who knew that this would happen before they even entered the market? Then where's the thing you wanted to trade with me? Chi-Chi saw that no one was speaking up for her, and that most of the people had left after the skinny man's shout. She knew that she'd be at a disadvantage this time. She could only go for the next best thing. Oh, this is a 2nd-level pill, a small chi gathering pill. Seeing that you're a mystic late phase peak, it'll help you level up to Earth class. The skinny man took out a small box from his pocket and handed it to Chi-Chi. How is it?
Fair, right?
Chi-Chi felt wronged, but there was nothing she could do. My blue crystal is worth more than a small chi gathering pill, right? In actuality, a 2nd-level pill was worth a lot of money, but those who'd seen the whole process knew that Chi-Chi's item was worth even more. The blue crystal, on the other hand, was worth a lot of money. Just like some of the highest quality jade stones, it was a great material for crafting weapons. In this era, blacksmiths had already disappeared. Fortunately, there were still some divine weapons passed down from ancient times. However, these divine weapons might not be the most suitable divine weapons. Divine weapons were also divided into the 5 elements of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. For cultivators who cultivated in the gold element cultivation method, it was best to use the gold element divine weapons. If they used the water element divine weapons, they would naturally not be able to achieve the best effect. However, cultivators often couldn't decide the attributes of the divine weapons in their hands. It was already not easy to obtain a divine weapon, so how could they be picky? Where would you find the right attribute for a weapon to choose from? As a result, it was time to modify the weapon. The modification method was to use the essence blood of a sky-class spirit beast or a part of its body and put it into the furnace with the weapon. This would change the weapon's attribute. For example, the blood of a metal-type heaven-rank spirit beast could transform a divine weapon into a metal-type weapon. Of course, this modification wasn't 100% success. The success rate depended on the materials used during the tempering. This material was jade, and pure topaz was one of them. The purer and more jade stones were added, the higher the chance of successfully refining the divine weapon's attribute. If one were to say that this pure jade was very precious to the cultivation world, then the blue crystal was even more precious. The effect of the blue crystal was even more heaven-defying. It could turn a weapon into a weapon that could be used by an earth class. The school beauty's personal expert, Welcome readers to log in. Read the full text. Chapter 2473. Everyone knew that only a sky class could imbue chi into a weapon of the same element to maximize its power. Earth classes, on the other hand, couldn't imbue chi into their weapons, and so it was better not to use it in a fight. It was a burden, not as practical as a skill. However, there were also exceptions. For example, this godly weapon had a large amount of blue crystals added during the tempering process. After the tempering process was successful, an Earth rank expert could instill Zhen Qi into it. However, the amount of Zhen Qi instilled depended on the amount of blue crystals added. Chi-Chi only had a small piece of blue crystal in her hand, and it really wasn't enough for anything, but it was still priceless. It was something an Earth class couldn't get their hands on. Normally speaking, it was a very difficult process for an Earth class to break through to Sky class, and so the Earth class kept collecting them. Perhaps they would be able to enjoy the power of a weapon before breaking through. Blue crystal? Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. He didn't think that Chi-Chi would have something like this. This surprised Lin Yi. He didn't want to stick his nose into other people's business, but now he changed his mind. Lin Yi didn't really care if Chi-Chi got hurt or not, but this blue crystal was something Lin Yi had to get. So, you don't want the small chi gathering pill anymore? The skinny man took back the small chi gathering pill and put it back into his pocket. It was only now that everyone realized that this skinny man didn't even want to give up the pill. He was robbing them. But even if it was an open robbery, they wouldn't say anything. After all, it wasn't their belongings, and it didn't matter. Chi-Chi's tears were welling up in her eyes. She wasn't a spiritual practitioner, and she couldn't break through to Earth class even if she wanted the pill. Exchanging the blue crystal for the pill was a big loss, but not giving it up was an even bigger loss. And so Chi-Chi nodded, depressed. I want it. You want it? Too late. The skinny man chuckled. I didn't want it before, but I'm not giving it up now. Give it to her? Lin Yi really couldn't stand it anymore. Lin Yi also knew how to bully people, but Lin Yi always bullied people who had a grudge against him. Lin Yi would never do such a thing if there was no enmity between them. The skinny man in front of him was a perfect example of going too far. Who are you? The skinny man did not expect that there would be someone who would meddle in other people's business. It was not the first time he had done this kind of thing, but it was the first time someone stood up for him. But he wasn't afraid. Revealing his Earth class strength, he sneered at Lin Yi. Are you sure you want to stand up for her? From the skinny hempole's perspective, Lin Yi was a hothead. As long as he revealed his strength, Lin Yi would definitely get lost obediently. But what he didn't expect was that Lin Yi wasn't affected at all. He took out the pill box from his pocket and threw it to Chi-Chi. Take it, don't trade with people like this next time. Oh. Chi-Chi was a little displeased. Why didn't Lin Yi take her blue crystal back? Why was he giving it to her instead? Why was this guy like this not helping her to the end? Half of it. But still, Lin Yi did help. Chi-Chi had no choice but to accept it. Thank you. The skinny man frowned when he saw that his aura didn't work. But after some hesitation, he gave up on asking for the pill. He turned to Lin Yi. All right, you're done here. I'm leaving. Whose father are you? Lin Yi frowned and humphed coldly. I'm warning you, kid, don't meddle in other people's business. I'm not just one person. The skinny man could guess that Lin Yi was an Earth class. After all, his aura didn't affect Lin Yi at all. But he wasn't afraid either. He was one of the three brothers, and all three of them were Earth class. They had powerful backgrounds as well. This was why he wasn't afraid. Be careful. You won't be able to enter the market. According to your theory, the one with the harder fist is the boss, right? Lin Yi said with a smile on the skinny guy's face. Good that you know. The skinny man didn't hear the mockery in Lin Yi's tone. He nodded as if it was a matter of course. Others might not know, but the skinny man knew his own family. The three brothers were the three disciples of the vice chairman of the Cultivator Trading Association. The eldest and second brother were in charge of checking the qualifications of the cultivators market. If Lin Yi were to really cause trouble, he'd just have to tell his eldest and second brother, and Lin Yi wouldn't even be able to enter the market. Oh, if that's the case, I have a soul-gathering pill here. Lin Yi took out a small bottle from his backpack and handed it to the skinny man. This is a first-level pill. It's good enough for you. I'll use this to exchange for the blue crystal. Huh. The skinny man was stunned, but then he laughed. Ha ha ha, kid. Are you sure you're not joking? You're the funniest person I've ever seen. But the skinny guy didn't even get to finish before Lin Yi slapped him across the face.
Slap.
Half of the guy's face swelled up.
You hit me?
The skinny man didn't expect Lin Yi to suddenly attack without any warning. Usually in a conflict like this, both sides would first say a few words to show off, and then they'd start fighting. It wasn't like there was any deep hatred between them, so who would attack without even knowing each other? So the skinny man didn't use his pure chi to protect his body. His face swelled up, and he gritted his teeth in anger. He wanted to attack, but Lin Yi suddenly released the aura of an Earth-class mid-phase peak. The skinny man's expression turned ugly. Earth-class mid-phase peak? Deal or no deal? Lin Yi looked at the skinny guy coldly. So, what if I give it to you first? The skinny man knew that a wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. One of his brothers was an Earth-class late-phase peak, but they were guarding the entrance of the market right now. There was no way they'd come to help him. He took a deep breath and took out the blue crystal from his pocket, handing it over to Lin Yi. However, he was already hating Lin Yi. He'd memorized Lin Yi's face and was prepared to let his brothers know when Lin Yi entered the market. He'd give Lin Yi and Yang Qiqi some trouble. Lin Yi smiled coldly as he put the blue crystal away. Up until now, no one had said anything. It was as if these people didn't care about the skinny man bullying Yang Qiqi and Lin Yi bullying the skinny man. They were just there to watch the show, and then left. The school beauty's personal expert. Welcome to login. Read the full text. Chapter 2474. Qiqi frowned as she watched Lin Yi put the crystal away. This guy really wasn't a good person after all. He didn't really want to help her. He just wanted to use this as an excuse to take the crystal for himself. Qiqi frowned as she watched Lin Yi put the crystal away. And this guy was even more tyrannical, using a first-level pill to trade for the blue crystal. That skinny guy was losing out big time. But Qiqi knew that if she asked Lin Yi for the blue crystal now, she'd be asking for it. So, after some hesitation, she came up with a good idea. She calmed herself down and pretended to be very grateful as she walked over to Lin Yi. Warrior, thank you. Puffed. Lin Yi looked at Qiqi oddly. Warrior?
Ugh.
Qiqi paused as well. She didn't have much experience in the Jianghu, and she grew up in a foreign country. Her knowledge of the Jianghu was limited to those wuxia movies and TV dramas. She didn't know how to address Lin Yi, but warrior didn't seem right. That's a warrior. Lin Yi was speechless. Where did this cool girl learn all these weird terms? Thank you for helping out just now. Qiqi realized that the terms she'd learned in the Jianghu weren't quite right, so she decided to just say it. Oh, it's nothing. Lin Yi said faintly as he looked at Qiqi. As for Qiqi thanking him, Lin Yi didn't believe that. He'd taken the blue crystal from this girl, and not only did she not dare ask for it back, she was even trying to get close to him. This wasn't Qiqi's personality at all. Naturally, Lin Yi didn't believe that Qiqi was really thanking him. In fact, anyone could tell that Lin Yi had only helped her out of convenience. His true goal was still the blue crystal, but he'd taken it from a skinny guy legitimately. Boss, they're about to enter. Shall we go? Han Xiaopa reminded Lin Yi. In a place like this, it was best not to interact too much with strangers. After all, there was no knowing what was in a person's heart. Who knew if it would bring unnecessary trouble? All right, we'll part ways here then, Mississippi, Lin Yi said with a smile. Wait. Yang Qiqi didn't want Lin Yi to leave just like that. How was she supposed to get her blue crystal back if Lin Yi left? So Qiqi quickly stopped Lin Yi. Is there anything else? Lin Yi asked. The people here are dangerous, and I've just entered the Jianghu. I wonder if you could help me out and let me go with you? Qiqi heard Lin Yi call her a heroine, so she started calling Lin Yi a swordsman. In fact, this was also how the world addressed each other. It was just that it was not commonly used. Is that so? All right then. Lin nodded and agreed. In truth, this was Yang Qiqi. If it were someone else, Lin wouldn't have agreed so readily. Han Xiaopa frowned. He wanted to remind Lin to reject the offer, but decided against it. Lin was the boss, after all. He had his own plans, and so Han Xiaopa didn't say anything more. Thank you. Qiqi was overjoyed. As long as he said yes, she'd work hard to get the blue crystal back. That was something she needed to exchange for little Nine's life. She couldn't let Lin take it no matter what. A second-level pill was valuable, but it was far less valuable than the blue crystal. 10 second-level pills might not even be enough to exchange for a small piece of blue crystal. Qiqi was looking for the ultimate treasure, and so she had to get it back. Otherwise, she'd have to go back empty-handed. Plus, according to the information, the treasure that could sustain little Nine's life did exist in this market. The three walked together, but Lin noticed that the people around them were keeping a respectful distance from them. The strength that Lin had shown just now was above average, and in the eyes of most of the mystics, he was an unreachable existence. Especially since Lin had been so domineering, bullying that skinny guy until he didn't dare say a word. As a result, most people thought of Lin as a dangerous person, a troublemaker. They walked quickly to the foot of the mountain, and there was a checkpoint. It seemed that this was the place to verify one's identity. Lin couldn't help but think of the scene in the Wulong Haut Mountains. Take out the invitation letter. Hey, kid, is this invitation letter yours? You're just a golden class late phase peak. Is this a place for a scumbag like you to come to? The younger of the two guards grabbed a skinny man who was at the peak late phase of the golden class. Big brothers, this invitation is real. I signed up through the trade association. Masters at the peak of the late phase of the golden class were quite powerful in the common world, but here, they were at the bottom of the food chain, so they had to be careful. It wasn't strange that Lin could see through this person's strength, since Lin had a golden finger. But these two guards didn't have one, and it was quite unbelievable that they could see through the golden class late phase peak strength without using any incantations or skills. Really? Even if the invitation is real, who knows where you got it from? You might have picked it up from a dead body. The older man raised an eyebrow and said coldly, All right, if there's nothing else, then get out of here. The master at the peak of the late phase of the golden class suddenly felt helpless. He gritted his teeth, took out a small box from his bag, and handed it over along with the invitation. Big brothers, this invitation was indeed picked up from a dead man, but he also had this thing on him. Since that man is dead, this thing should also belong to the Returnees Trading Association, so I'll hand it over. Let me see. The young man smiled when he saw that the golden class late phase peak was so obedient, and he took the small box and opened it. It was a first-level medicinal pill, and he nodded. Not bad. Since you didn't keep the money you picked up, please come in. Thank you, big brothers. The young man who was at the peak of the late phase of the golden class quickly walked into the market. Lin had been carefully observing the two guards, and it was obvious that they were looking for trouble, bullying the weak and fearing the strong. This kind of situation made Lin very disdainful. Chapter 2475. It was obvious that they were asking for bribes, but they did it openly. The organizer of this market was probably not a good person. Without the approval and connivance of the higher-ups, they wouldn't dare to do this. According to Lin's observation, as long as one's strength was slightly lower, they would be more or less harassed. There were all sorts of reasons. Even the reason of being disheveled was used. Of course, there were a few who were lucky enough to escape. However, these people dared not say anything and obediently paid the bribe before they were allowed to enter the market. But for those of higher levels, such as those of Earth rank and above, they were not harassed. After looking at the invitation, they were allowed to pass. It seemed that these people were the type to bully the weak and fear the strong. Get out of the way, let my grandfather go first. Just as Lin and the others followed the people in front of them to the entrance, an angry shout came from behind them. Then, a luxuriously dressed young man strode over, pushing the people on both sides of him aside. The young man didn't wear a mask, and the short old man behind him didn't wear a mask either. The two of them, one in front and one behind, walked briskly towards them, not putting anyone in their eyes at all. This young man's strength was not high. Lin Yi took a look and saw that he was only at the peak of early Earth rank. However, the old man behind him was not simple. He was actually a heaven rank early stage master. However, what made Lin Yi a little surprised was that this heaven rank master was the one sent by the Hidden House of You to block the road, and was injured by Lin Yi. This guy's injury was already healed? But thinking about it, he was a guest of the Hidden House of You, and the Hidden House of You was an alchemy family. Naturally, they had plenty of pills. They might not have enough for people like you, Dake, but for heaven rank masters, they would definitely have enough. After all, heaven rank masters were very rare for the hidden houses. The short old man did not hide his heaven rank aura at all. In fact, he should have done it on purpose to highlight his abnormality. Although there were some Earth-class mid and Earth-class late-stage masters who were pushed away by the young man, they all obediently moved to the side and kept quiet. Their fear of a Sky-class master came from the bottom of their hearts. However, Lin Yi didn't dodge. He was very calm. When the young man walked over, Lin Yi just dodged and dodged the young man's hand. With regards to Lin Yi's evasion, the young man seemed to be very annoyed. He coldly snorted and glared at Lin Yi. However, because his grandfather was behind him, he didn't have the time to argue with Lin Yi. However, he had already memorized the appearance of Lin Yi's mask in his heart. He was ready to find an opportunity to deal with Lin Yi after entering the market. When the two guards saw a heaven stage expert walking over, they immediately smiled and welcomed him respectfully. "Please come in. Please come in."
Ugh.
The short expert snorted, then quickly walked into the market with the young man. The two guards didn't even check their invitation. But Sky-class masters were very qualified to enter a low-end market like this. Even if they didn't have an invitation, they wouldn't stop them. Yang Qiqi saw this and couldn't help but snort. They really bullied the weak and feared the strong. These two guards were exactly the same as the skinny man who robbed her before. They were practically a family. But what Qiqi didn't know was that she was right. These three really were a family of three brothers. The short expert entering the market didn't have any effect on the others. It seemed that most people were already used to it and felt that heaven rank experts should have such extravagance. The two guards also returned to their despicable appearance and continued to bully the soft persimmon. When it was Lin Yi, Han Xiaopa, and Yang Qiqi's turn, Lin Yi thought that after the two showed their invitation, they'd be able to pass without a hitch. What he didn't expect was for the two guards to stop them. "You have a nice body, aren't you? Pretty hot. Which sect are you from? Is the invitation real?" The young guard looked at Yang Qiqi and asked in a flirtatious tone. "I'm a freelancer," Yang Qiqi said. "Outer sect freelancer? That's rare, isn't it?" The older guard chimed in as well. "You don't look like a good person to me. I suspect that you're hiding something dangerous on you. Take off your clothes and let us search you." "You?" Yang Qiqi's face went red with anger at the two's shameless words. Her face was covered by the black mask, but one could still see the flames of anger in her eyes. "This is a legitimate invitation from the trade association. I paid the deposit. How could it be fake?" "Huh. Us brothers have been guarding the door for so many years. You think we can't tell if it's real or fake? If we say it's fake, then it's fake. Don't waste your breath. Search us or get the hell out of here," the young guard said with a cold smile. "Then what's wrong with our invitation?" Han Xiaopa was also a little annoyed. Although these two guards liked to bully the weak, they still knew how to read the situation. They knew to bully the Golden and Mystic class masters. As for the Earth class masters, they would let them pass without exception. As for the Heaven class masters, they would even greet them respectfully. But it was Lin Yi and Han Xiaopa who were in trouble. Naturally, Han Xiaopa was a little annoyed. "We're Earth class. We have an invitation. We know you're Earth class, one early phase, one mid-phase peak," the older guard said coldly. "We're not blind. We can tell." As the old guard spoke, Lin Yi finally understood. The old guard had a strange compass in his hand, and it was probably because of this compass that they were able to see through a person's strength. Linny didn't have any intention of meddling in their business, but now that the matter had fallen onto his head, Linny naturally wouldn't let them get away with it. He looked at the two in front of him and said coldly, "If you're not blind, then let us pass. Otherwise, I don't mind turning you into a real blind man."
How dare you?
The young guard was furious after hearing Lin Yi's words. "A mere Earth-class mid-phase peak, and you dare yell in front of me? Do you want to die? Your invitation is fake. I'm confiscating it. You can get the hell out of here." As he spoke, the young guard picked up the invitation letter and tore it into pieces, throwing it in the air. The wind blew the pieces away, and they scattered in all directions. Chapter 2476. Vice leader from Lin Yi's strength was no longer the same as before. It was different from when he fought against the Third Elder at the Red Conch headquarters. Now, if he were to face an Earth-class late-phase peak, as long as it wasn't too much of a freak, he could easily kill them. Of course, the Tagan Dragon was a special exception. Before, when Lin Yi defeated an Earth-class late-phase expert, it was still understandable. It could be explained by Lin Yi's exquisite martial arts. But now, besides Han Xiaopa, no one else was optimistic about Lin Yi's chances of winning. An Earth-class late-phase peak. What kind of concept was that? That was a half-step Sky-class expert, and his Earth-class martial arts had been trained to the limit. He could use the 10th form, but Lin Yi could only use the 6th form. The result of this collision was obvious. Moreover, in the eyes of most people, although Lin Yi was standing there without moving, the young guard was already injured to that extent. How could Lin Yi not be injured at all? Even if he was standing there, he must have suffered some serious internal injuries. This was inevitable. The more Lin Yi fought, the more serious his injuries would be. After all, he was an Earth-class mid-phase peak, not a Sky-class. Not to mention Lin Yi's strength. Even an Earth-class late-phase peak would be heavily injured if they went head-to-head with an Earth-class late-phase peak. Not to mention that Lin Yi wasn't even an Earth-class late-phase peak. However, just as everyone was thinking that Lin Yi's next move would be a bloody mess, they were all disappointed. The Elder Guard was once again sent flying by Lin Yi's attack, falling right beside the young guard. He spat out a mouthful of blood, his eyes rolled back, and he fainted. He seemed to be in an even worse state than the young guard from before. Beep, 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 beep. In addition to the two guards at the entrance of the market, there were also a number of workers here. However, these workers weren't Earth-class masters, they were just ordinary Golden-class disciples. At this time, they saw the two guards being beheaded by Lin Yi. He was so frightened that he hurriedly pressed the emergency alarm and called for the experts in the market square to come and help. Everyone else looked at Lin Yi with fear and shock in their eyes, backing away subconsciously, not daring to get too close to Lin Yi, Han Xiaopa, and Chi-Chi. They were afraid that Lin Yi would vent his anger on them, and they were also afraid that the people from the Cultivator Trade Association would come out and treat them as Lin Yi's accomplices. "What are you guys doing?" Lin Yi looked at the staff. He asked coldly. The Golden-class late-phase peak master who rang the alarm paled upon hearing Lin Yi's question. He wanted to run, but he didn't dare. There was no way he could run in front of an Earth-class mid-phase peak. Plus, this was a special master who could easily kill an Earth-class late-phase peak. Therefore, he was so scared that his forehead was covered in cold sweat. After a while, he stammered, "Senior, you killed someone here. We can only inform the people in the cultivators market." "Oh, that's good." Lin Yi nodded. "This will have to be dealt with eventually." "Thank you for your understanding, Senior." The Golden-class late-phase peak forced a smile, as if relieved of a heavy burden. He looked at Lin Yi gratefully. Lin Yi didn't move. He just stood there with his hands behind his back. These two guards were domineering. Although the two guards were domineering, Lin Yi didn't believe that the big shots of the Cultivator Trade Association would be so domineering. Even if these two people were their disciples and their behavior was tacitly approved by them, at least in public, they couldn't support such a blatant act of blocking cultivators from entering the market and looking for trouble to bribe them. Of course, There was the possibility of backstabbing or looking for trouble, but they definitely wouldn't fall out with Lin Yi right there and then. If that happened, it would be the same as disappointing the hearts of all cultivators. Originally, a high deposit had been paid for the entrance invitation, and this deposit was not refundable. If they had to pay a tribute when entering, it would be a little hard to say. If it was the personal actions of the two guards, it would be understandable, but if the Cultivator Trade Association openly supported this kind of unhealthy practice, then it would be a little unreasonable. Who dares to cause trouble here? A cold voice suddenly sounded. An old man surrounded by two disciples walked quickly towards Lin Yi's side. He walked quickly towards Lin Yi's direction, his face changing as he saw the two guards on the ground. How dare you? You dare to kill people from the Cultivator Trade Association Law Enforcement Hall disciples. Take him down. Yes. The two disciples immediately cupped their fists and replied. Then, they rushed towards Lin Yi. This old man was a peak early heaven class master, and the two so-called Law Enforcement Hall disciples behind him were peak late earth class masters. This lineup was not small, but against Lin Yi, it was really not enough. Once upon a time, the peak late earth class and the peak early heaven class masters were existences that Lin Yi looked up to. Back in the Wulong Haut Mountains, Lin Yi also had no chance of winning, but with the passage of time, Lin Yi didn't feel any pressure standing here. Even if he fought head-on, he was confident that he could make this peak early heaven class master stay. Old thing, you're not distinguishing between right and wrong, are you? Lin Yi laughed coldly as he watched the two peak late earth class disciples walk over. Look at the strength of those two on the ground, then think about whether or not you can take me down. The two law enforcement hall disciples stopped in their tracks, their expressions changing. Before, they only saw that Lin Yi was an Earth-class mid-phase peak master, and they didn't think too much about it because they were Earth-class late-phase peak masters. But now that Lin Yi reminded them, they knew that something was wrong. The two people on the ground were Earth-class late-phase peak, and one was Earth-class late-phase peak, and both of them were killed by Lin Yi. The two Earth-class late-phase peak disciples of the Hall of Law Enforcement weren't enough. Brat, are you threatening us? The peak early heaven class old man frowned and snorted. Killing people here, and you think you're in the right? Why don't you first ask why I killed those two guards, and who made the first move? Do you think that the Cultivators Trade Association can be unreasonable? Lin Yi smiled coldly as he retorted. You guys can protect your own people, but you have to be reasonable. Ask the disciple who sent you the alarm. How did this happen? As Lin Yi said that, he looked at the golden class disciple who alerted him. Chapter 2483_School Bells Bodyguard Free Reading Chapter 2483 Vice Chairman Update Complete. Chapter 2477. The old man took a deep breath and tried to suppress his anger. He turned to look at the yellow class disciple. With so many cultivators watching, he couldn't twist the truth even though the two guards were his disciples. He could only ask, "Tell me what's going on?" This is what happened. The yellow class disciple didn't dare to speak carelessly in front of so many cultivators, so he could only tell the truth. Otherwise, what integrity would the Cultivator Trade Association have if he were to publicly misrepresent them? One had to know that the Cultivator Trade Association earned money from the invitations. Most of the profits came from the auctions. The reason why the auctions were sought after was because the Cultivator Trade Association was fair. They didn't sell fake goods and had a good reputation. Otherwise, who would they sell their goods to? Although these two disciples asked for bribes from the cultivators who entered while guarding the gate, the heaven-rank old man, as their master, turned a blind eye and acquiesced to the existence of this situation. In fact, it was also because this situation didn't cause any trouble. Those cultivators who wanted to enter the market could only accept it. Who would dare to fight back like Lin Yi? Most people were afraid of the strength of the guards and didn't want to give up the opportunity to enter the market, so they swallowed their anger. As for the high-level cultivators, the two guards didn't dare to make things difficult for them. This was also the reason why they lived in peace. Who would have thought that Lin Yi would be such a prick? After a conflict, he directly killed someone. The two guards had kicked an iron plate. The vice president's face darkened when he heard the words of the yellow class disciple. In fact, he had thought that the two guards might have deliberately made things difficult for them and failed to bribe them. Then, they angered Lin Yi and killed them. But he wasn't sure. In his impression, the two guards had a sense of propriety. They usually picked on cultivators of the yellow class and the mystic class. Even mystic late phase and above rarely went looking for trouble, not to mention an earth class, especially one that was at the peak of mid-phase. That was even more unlikely. As a result, he was still hoping that his two disciples wouldn't be that stupid. If it really was some other conflict, even if his disciple made the first move, Lin Yi would still be the killer, and he'd be able to find a reason to take revenge. But now, it seemed that they really tried to bribe Lin Yi, and Lin Yi had no choice but to make a move. Although the vice president hated Lin Yi, he couldn't do anything to Lin Yi in front of so many people. He could only wait until the end of the Cultivator Trade Association and find a chance to make a move. So that's how it is. I've wronged this little brother. The vice president looked at Lin Yi with a gentle expression and nodded. I'm sorry. Here, on behalf of the Cultivator Trade Association, I apologize to you, little brother. This is a problem caused by our lax management. These two disciples, even if you didn't make a move, we would have gotten rid of them if we found out the truth. That's good. Lin Yi nodded. On the surface, he looked very respectful, but in his heart, he was cursing. This old man really knew how to pretend to be a good person. He probably hated Lin Yi to death. All right, since the matter has been resolved. Then, little brother, please enter. The vice president could only temporarily put down his hatred and said, however, if something like this happens again, I hope you won't make a move on your own. As long as you hand over some information to us, we will expose you. We won't let these vermin and scum go. After all, this is our turf. We won't pursue it outside of the market, but in the market, please follow our rules. Well said, well said. Lin Yi smiled coldly. Expose me to you? Where would I go to find you? If it wasn't for the yellow class disciple warning you to come out, I would have been able to go in and find you. If I didn't kill your two disciples, I would have had to leave with my tail between my legs. Take over their previous job and check the invitations. The vice president of Heaven Division ordered the previous Huang class disciple. Yes, vice president. The yellow class disciple replied carefully. The Heaven rank vice president nodded before turning around and leaving. The two law enforcement hall disciples also quickly carried the two guards into the market, their fates unknown. Lin Yi, Han Xiaopa, and Yang Qiqi followed them into the market. The people around them all moved out of the way, afraid that if they pissed off Lin Yi, he'd start killing again. Han Xiaopa looked at Lin Yi, impressed. Boss was really something. Even the vice president, a sky-class early-phase peak, was here. Didn't he just leave obediently, without a word? Boss wasn't just strong, his wits were unparalleled as well. The matter was over. Han Xiaopa thought about it carefully and understood why Lin Yi was so fearless. This was the cultivators' market, and the people from the Cultivators Trade Association didn't dare to openly go against them. They were in the wrong, and if they were to go against Lin Yi, it would be the same as letting other cultivators see them as a joke. It would also chill the hearts of these cultivators, who would trust the Cultivators Trade Association in the future. And so, no matter how sullen the vice president felt, he had no choice but to place justice before family. Yang Qiqi, on the other hand, was in a mess. Lin Yi was so scary, a violent maniac. He'd take someone's life at the slightest provocation. Would he kill her if she really took the blue crystal? And so, Yang Qiqi retreated a little. After all, the person in front of her was just too strong. She wasn't his match at all, and Lin Yi could fight people above his level. That made her feel even more unreachable. But Qiqi thought of little Jio's sickness. She knew that if she didn't trade the treasures back, little Jio's sickness would only worsen. His life might even be in danger. She could only grit her teeth and hold on. No matter how hard, no matter how dangerous, she had to do it. She had to get the blue crystal back. Otherwise, this trip would be a waste. Wasn't the Ice Palace test dangerous? Didn't she still go there? And so, Yang Qiqi thought about it and followed Lin Yi. Wait for me. Lin Yi looked at Qiqi, but didn't stop her, allowing her to follow him. Lin Yi didn't know how he felt about Yang Qiqi. She was a pretty girl, but she had too little experience in society. She often bit the hand that fed her. If it weren't for the fact that Lin Yi had interacted with her so many times, Lin Yi really wouldn't bother with her. Chapter 2478. But now that Qiqi had given him a blue crystal that Lin Yi desperately needed, Lin Yi naturally wouldn't chase her away. He let her walk beside him. After entering the cultivator's market, not long after, the atmosphere became lively. There were many cultivators setting up stalls at the roadside. There were all sorts of medicinal pills, martial techniques, natural treasures, and many other good things on display. Of course, most of the things that cultivators took out to exchange were things that were useless to them, but they were trash to them. In the hands of others, they might be peerless treasures. Therefore, no one would sell things that they did not need cheaply. They would hold them in their hands and wait to exchange for the things that were most suitable for them and what they needed the most. Therefore, although there were a lot of stalls and a lot of things, there weren't many who could actually make a deal. Everyone was just watching and waiting. Many people had participated in the cultivators' market square many times, but they hadn't found what they needed. Still, it was very safe to set up stalls here. They didn't have to worry about people forcing them to buy or sell. After all, the disciples of the law enforcement hall weren't just there for show. Even if they did meet a sky class, they wouldn't be able to do anything about it. It was just that sky class wouldn't be interested in their things. There was a remote courtyard in the cultivators' market. This was the temporary office of the cultivators' market, and outsiders weren't allowed to enter. The heaven-rank vice president from before was currently sitting on a wooden armchair with a gloomy expression. In front of him was a skinny man who was trembling with fear. "What's going on?" the vice guild leader asked as he glanced at his disciple in name. Although the three of them were only his in-name disciples, they had been following him around the cultivators' market all these years. Even if they didn't make any contributions, they still put in a lot of effort. Moreover, the three of them were very perceptive and would always let him, their master, have the first look at the good stuff they extorted. Hence, the vice president of the Heaven Division had a lot of affection for them. Two of them dying out of the blue naturally put him in a bad mood. "Shifu, I didn't know that kid was that cocky, killing big brother and second brother." The skinny man's face was bitter, filled with anger and sadness. "It's not just arrogant. Earth class mid-stage peak, jumping levels to injure an Earth class late stage, Earth class peak late stage master. What kind of concept is this?" The vice president shook his head and said, "Your two brothers aren't in any life-threatening danger. I've already used medicinal pills to save them. However, it's impossible for me to retain my previous strength. Even if I come back to life, I'll be an ordinary person, and I'll lose all my strength." Sigh. The skinny man sighed helplessly. However, his big brother and second brother were able to keep their lives. This was the best result for now. "All right, I'll ask you what happened. Don't talk nonsense. What exactly happened?" The skinny man's words had been vague and unclear, so the vice leader still hadn't figured out why the two guards had attacked him. All he knew was that he was trying to get revenge for the skinny guy. The skinny guy didn't dare hide anything either. He told the vice leader about how he failed to get Qiqi's blue crystal and how he didn't want to give up. He revealed the attire of Lin Yi and the others to Big Brother and Second Brother so that they could cause trouble for Lin Yi and the others and retrieve the blue crystal. Blue crystal? The vice president's expression couldn't help but change after hearing this. Although the blue crystal wasn't very useful to him, it was still a rare treasure. After a moment of silence, the vice leader said, "Don't worry, I'll get revenge for you." "Thank you, master." The skinny man was overjoyed and quickly thanked him. Lin Yi, Han Xiaopa, and Qiqi walked around the stalls. They didn't stop because Lin Yi didn't need the items on the stalls. Most of them were things he had seen in the hidden treasury of House Han. They couldn't be considered rare treasures. In fact, it was hard for these low-level practitioners to take out anything good. Xiaoka came today as well, but she wasn't here to trade. She wanted to see if there was anything valuable to take back. Although Lin Yi had helped the orphanage get a lot of money, the orphanage was expanding, and there were more and more children. They couldn't just rely on Lin Yi and Fatty Lai's help. Although Lin Yi said that he didn't want anything from her, Xiaoke still felt that she couldn't owe Lin Yi too much. If she owed him too much, she wouldn't be able to explain herself. If Lin Yi really wanted her to repay him, how would she repay him? So, Xiaoke wanted to be independent. She wouldn't let go of a market like this where she could get good stuff. Xiaoke's eyes scanned the crowd and the stalls, looking for her prey. Suddenly, her eyes lit up with excitement and surprise. She saw him again. It really was him. He came to the cultivators' market too. Xiaoke was shocked and overjoyed. This was the male thief she loved the most in her heart. It had been a long time since she saw him, and she was a little disappointed. She was happy to see him again. But Xiaoke saw Han Xiaopa and Yang Qiqi beside him. She didn't know what they were doing, but they weren't the female thief Song Lingshan and Qin Yutian who followed her in the tomb. Although they had their faces covered, Xiaoke could still tell them apart from the way they dressed. And so, Xiaoke hesitated and didn't call out to Lin Yi. She didn't know why Lin Yi was here, and she didn't want to disturb Lin Yi and ruin his plans. But she didn't want to lose this chance to interact with Lin Yi. She could only look at Lin Yi and the others from afar, waiting for the right opportunity. Qiqi was looking for a very simple thing, something to maintain little Jiu's condition. Just like Lin Yi and Han Xiaopa, she only needed to glance at the stalls to know what they were selling. Seeing that Lin Yi was almost done looking at the stalls, Lin Yi was a little disappointed. He didn't see the colored steel he'd been expecting. He turned to Han Xiaopa. Pure yellow jade. Is there nothing? Boss, that shouldn't be the case. The news I got was that there really is pure yellow jade being sold in the cultivators' market. Han Xiaopa said, but if it's not in the hands of these cultivators, then it might be in the hands of the Cultivators Trading Association. They'll be auctioning it later, and we'll know when we go take a look. Auction? Were they going to use cash to bid?
Or?
Lin Yi asked. Chapter 2479. Yes, the association usually accepts cash. They're an anomaly in the world of practitioners. Their goal is to earn money, Han Xiaopa said. Han Xiaopa said, of course, this is the lowest level cultivators market. As for the higher level cultivators market, I'm not sure if it's based on bartering or money. Because my strength level is too low, I've never participated.
Cash is fine.
Lin Yi nodded. If they were to trade items, Lin Yi wouldn't have an advantage. Other than the turtle spit ice crystal, which he didn't know what to do, Lin Yi only had a few types of pills left. Qiqi, who was behind Lin Yi, let out a small gasp and stopped in her tracks. Lin Yi, on the other hand, turned around to see Qiqi walking quickly to a stall, her eyes fixed on the only bottle there. Yang Qiqi, on the other hand, didn't kneel down immediately. She looked at the watch on her wrist, and then at the bottle on the ground, her eyes filled with joy. Lin Yi looked at Qiqi, a little surprised. The watch on her wrist was probably some kind of technological product helping Qiqi identify treasures. Of course, Lin Yi wouldn't ask Qiqi what it was. Lin Yi wasn't interested in that right now. Excuse me, this is... Qiqi squatted down and pointed at the only bottle on the stall. Lin Yi turned his head to look at the stall owner, and his eyes narrowed. This person was actually a Sky-class early phase master. It wasn't that there weren't high-level practitioners setting up stalls here, but the fact that there were Sky-class practitioners setting up stalls here personally surprised Lin Yi. Moreover, the Heaven Rank cultivator was masked. It was obvious that he didn't want others to know his identity. This also proved how precious the small bottle he brought was. Since you don't know what it is, you can't afford the price. Let's go. The Sky-class looked at Qiqi and closed his eyes. He looked as if he didn't want to pay any attention to him. Qiqi didn't expect this person to be this hard to talk to, but for Lil Nine's sake, she decided to speak softly. Senior, may I ask if this is something from an Earth Element Sky-class spirit beast? Oh, you know about it? The Sky-class opened his eyes again and stared at Qiqi. You actually know that this is the blood of an Earth Element Sky-class? Chi-Chi couldn't explain how she knew. She could only nod. Senpai, I don't know. I want to exchange for this. What do you need? Since you can tell what this thing is, I won't hide it from you. The heaven rank cultivator said directly. What I need is something from a heaven rank water spirit beast.
Ah.
Yang Chi-Chi paused. She didn't think that this was what the sky class wanted.
She didn't have it then.
She asked subconsciously, can I have other precious things? For example, the blue crystal? Blue crystal? The heaven rank cultivator was stunned for a moment before he shook his head and said, the blue crystal is precious, but I don't need it. I don't need it. If you give me the blue crystal, I'll have to exchange it with someone else. It's much easier to exchange it with this thing of mine, but the blue crystal is priceless as well. Chi-Chi said, unwilling to give up. Linny frowned. Did this Chi-Chi have more blue crystals? Or was he eyeing his blue crystal? At the thought, Linny looked at Chi-Chi deeply. This girl was most likely following him for the blue crystal, wasn't she? It's true that the blue crystal is priceless, but you know that I'm a sky class and a water practitioner at that. I need something from a sky class water class spirit beast to modify my weapon. The heaven rank cultivator said, and perhaps there are other sky class practitioners like me who also have something from a sky class spirit beast. It's just that it doesn't suit their practitioner's arts, and they're waiting to exchange it. I, on the other hand, am looking for people like that. This guy is talking about modifying weapons. What does he mean? Lin Yi whispered to Han Xiaopa as the heaven class was explaining to Chi-Chi.
Oh.
Boss, you don't know? Han Xiaopa paused and explained, there are no more blacksmiths in the world of practitioners now. As for the magic weapons used by heaven rank powerhouses, they are all passed down from the past, but every magic weapon has its own attribute. With that, Han Xiaopa told Lin Yi about the effects of using things from sky-class spirit beasts to modify the attributes of his weapons. So that's how it is. Lin Yi nodded. He finally knew what the turtle spit ice crystal was for. The sky-class turtle was a water-class spirit beast, and this turtle spit ice crystal should be something from a sky-class spirit beast. It was used to modify weapons, and it was exactly what this sky-class practitioner needed. Of course, Lin Yi didn't take it out to trade. This thing wasn't useful to Lin Yi right now, and the sky-class practitioner's things were useless to Lin Yi as well. Lin Yi wouldn't trade it for Chi-Chi's needs. Lin Yi still wanted to see if there was anything he needed. Naturally, he wouldn't trade the turtle spit ice crystal so easily. One could see that as precious as the blood of a sky-class practitioner was, not many people really needed it. Other than Chi-Chi, no one else wanted it. So even if Lin Yi were to trade with him, it'd be hard for him to trade what he got back. Plus, Chi-Chi wouldn't be able to refuse him even if he did trade it back. But think about it, someone who has the water element sky class you need might not necessarily need the blood of an earth element sky class. Otherwise, you'd have traded it out a long time ago, wouldn't you? Chi-Chi didn't want to give up so easily. She was trying to convince Lin Yi. According to Chi-Chi's reliable sources, this sky-class practitioner had been going to all sorts of practitioners' markets for the past 2 years, but to no avail. That was why Chi-Chi didn't want to give up so easily. The sky-class lowered his head, evidently spot on by Chi-Chi's words. Indeed, as precious as the thing in his hand was, this person didn't need it. Even someone with something from a sky-class spirit beast might not be willing to trade it with him. But there might be a lot of people who need it. Even if the sky class doesn't need it, his disciples and brothers would need it, right? Maybe you'll get another chance, Chi-Chi said. Chapter 2480. I see. The sky class seemed to have something in mind after hearing Chi-Chi's words. It was no wonder, though. He'd been trading for it for a long time without getting anything out. Of course, it was because he only wanted something from a water element sky class, but it was also because other people didn't need something from an earth element sky class. Otherwise, if someone really needed it, they would have done everything they could to find out about a water element sky class. So, you agree to the trade? Chi-Chi asked, a little excited.
Let me think about it.
The heaven rank cultivator hesitated for a moment before saying, this matter is of great importance. Go take a look somewhere else first, and come find me later. All right, think about it. Chi-Chi was overjoyed. The Sky Class didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. There was hope if he wanted to think about it. With that, Chi-Chi stood up and followed Lin Yi and Han Xiaopa. Lin Yi and Han Xiaopa didn't say it out loud, but they both knew what Chi-Chi was thinking. In fact, Chi-Chi was hesitating as well. How was she going to deal with Lin Yi? How was she going to get the crystal back from Lin Yi? The corner of his eyes caught Chi-Chi's shifty gaze, and he felt a little helpless. This cool girl really lacked social experience, wasn't she? Her intentions were written all over her face. Wasn't she afraid that he'd be on guard against her? Chi-Chi couldn't think of a good way to get the crystal back from Lin Yi. Since she couldn't trick him, she'd have to steal it. Chi-Chi hesitated for a long time, and as if she'd made a big decision, she suddenly walked over and grabbed Lin Yi's arm. She spoke to Lin Yi in a sweet voice. Thank you for your help earlier, hero. Otherwise, I really would have been bullied by that scrawny guy. Lin Yi almost laughed out loud at Chi-Chi's sudden action. This cool chick was really indescribable. Although the voice was very sweet, Lin Yi could clearly hear the resistance and unwillingness in it, as well as a faint trace of fear. The arm that was holding him was also trembling. Come to think of it, this cool girl had never seduced a man before. Today, in order to steal the blue crystal, this was the first time. However, her acting skills were too bad. Lin Yi saw through her plot at a glance. If it was someone else he didn't know. Lin Yi had gotten rid of her a long time ago, but this was young Chi-Chi, someone who had a lot of interactions with Lin Yi. Lin Yi's feelings towards her were a mix of love and hate. Sometimes he thought she was a cute, cool girl, and other times he thought she was a bitch who repaid kindness with enmity. Looking at Chi-Chi's distant figure, Lin Yi couldn't help but feel playful. He wanted to prank Chi-Chi a little, and so he reached out his hand. He put an arm around Chi-Chi's shoulder and smiled. Haha, you're too polite. This is what chivalrous people like us should do. Chi-Chi shivered. She didn't expect Lin Yi to be this daring, hugging her. But Chi-Chi couldn't resist. She was the one who seduced Lin Yi first, and Lin Yi was just going with the flow. Wouldn't everything be for nothing if she resisted? Chi-Chi felt that it was humiliating to seduce Lin Yi, but when she thought about it, she didn't mind sacrificing a little. For little Joe, a little sacrifice was nothing. It wasn't real anyway. He'd kill Lin Yi after he achieved his goal. This guy wasn't a good person anyway, he was a big bully. What's wrong? Lin Yi could see Chi-Chi's nervousness, but pretended like he didn't know. It's nothing. Chi-Chi gritted her teeth as she moved her body closer to Lin Yi's side, her other hand reaching out. With her other hand, she was ready to reach into Lin Yi's backpack and steal the blue crystal. Of course, Chi-Chi wasn't a master thief, and it would be hard for her to steal something from Lin Yi's backpack. If Lin Yi was alerted, that would be troublesome. All she could do now was compromise. Haha, as long as it's nothing. Lin Yi took Chi-Chi's hand and started groping from her armpit to her chest. Chi-Chi's body froze as she glared at Lin Yi. She was about to go berserk and fight Lin Yi, but Lin Yi didn't seem to notice her stare. He looked in another direction. It wasn't that Lin Yi was faking it. Lin Yi suddenly felt a resentful gaze on him. Lin Yi wanted to act like he didn't know anything, but Lin Yi looked in the direction of the resentful gaze and saw someone who shocked him. You Xiaoka? Why was she here? Lin Yi paused. Xiaoka was surprised to see Lin Yi looking in her direction. Did he notice her? She was wearing a mask, wasn't she? The male thief was wearing a mask, so naturally Xiaoka would recognize him. But could he recognize her now? Was it because Lin Yi noticed that she was looking at him, or did Lin Yi recognize her? Xiaoka wasn't sure, but when Lin Yi turned his head again, she felt a little dejected, so he didn't recognize her. Lin Yi, of course, recognized Xiaoka. He smiled bitterly in his heart, thinking that no one would recognize the mask he took out casually. He didn't expect Xiaoka to be here as well. What a coincidence. But Lin Yi didn't want to reveal his identity, so he wore the mask. He didn't want people to know that he was buying large amounts of yellow jade, blue crystal, and colored steel. Plus, Lin Yi had quite a grudge with the Cultivator Trading Association. Although the vice chairman didn't look like he wanted to pursue the matter, Lin Yi could see the ruthlessness in his eyes. If there was a chance to backstab him, he wouldn't let it go. So at this time, being too close to Xiaoko wasn't a good thing. He might even drag her down with him. Plus, Lin Yi could roughly guess Xiaoko's purpose for coming here. Lin Yi didn't believe that Xiaoko was here to trade. This greedy girl used all her valuables to subsidize the orphanage. Where would she get the money to trade in the market? Her purpose here was most likely to steal and see if there was a chance to make a fortune. This way, it would be even harder for Lin Yi to recognize her. If Xiaoko stole something, he would be implicated as well. As for Yang Qiqi and Han Xiaopa, there was nothing he could do. They were involved and they couldn't run away even if they wanted to. Lin Yi could only bring them along. Chapter 20, 481. When Lin Yi turned his head, Qiqi was in a dilemma. Should she break free from Lin Yi's clutches and leave, or should she endure it? After weighing the pros and cons, Qiqi decided to endure it. She had to for Lil 9, but in her heart, she was cursing Lin Yi 1,000 times, wishing that Lin Yi would step on a rock and fall to his death. What's wrong? Lin Yi turned his head to Qiqi, pinching her chest a couple of times.
Ah.
Qiqi gasped, almost going crazy. She held it in. It's nothing. There's a lot of people here. It's not good. Oh, it's nothing. Lin Yi said nonchalantly, his actions getting more and more reckless. Han Xiaopa's face was full of question marks. Lin Yi wasn't usually this lecherous. He'd interacted with Lin Yi a lot already, and while there were plenty of beauties around him, Lin Yi would never do something this perverted. Could it be revenge? Han Xiaopa understood instantly. He wasn't an idiot. Qiqi had wanted to trade the blue crystal with a Sky Class practitioner for the blood of an Earth Elemental Sky Class. But where would she have the crystal? Wasn't it in Lin Yi's hands? With that, everyone knew what she was planning. She'd come to seduce Lin Yi to get the blue crystal back from Lin Yi, and Lin Yi had probably figured out Qiqi's intentions as well. Han Xiaopa shook his head and smiled coldly inwardly. This girl had a great body, but she was underestimating Boss Lin Yi too much. Boss Lin Yi had a lot of women around him, and there was no way she could compare to Yushu in terms of body. How about I go to your room tonight? Qiqi asked.
Haha, sure. But we'll talk about tonight.
Lin Yi, naturally, wouldn't let go of a good opportunity like this. Lin Yi wasn't a pervert, but he was a normal person, too. Qiqi often bit the hand that fed her, and Lin Yi didn't mind teaching her a lesson. Qiqi was helpless. She could only let Lin Yi touch her. She wanted to kill Lin Yi right now, but she couldn't hide the shyness in her eyes, looking as if she was enjoying it. It was as tragic as one could imagine. After walking around and making sure that there wasn't anything he needed, Lin Yi lost interest. Qiqi, on the other hand, was panicking. Being teased by Lin Yi like this wasn't a good thing. Not only was she pissed off, but she was also letting down her little ebro, but there was nothing she could do. All she could do was kill Lin Yi after the deed was done. But thinking back to how strong Lin Yi was, Qiqi didn't think that she was a match for him at all. If she were a match for Lin Yi, she wouldn't have to be bullied by that skinny guy. She was worried about losing him. Yang Qiqi had no choice but to endure it. Xiaopa, when's the auction? Lin Yi asked. According to the usual schedule. Tomorrow it should be. There's a free hotel for people to stay in at night. Han Xiaopa said. Boss, do you have anything you want to auction? We can put it up for auction. Yes. The pills Lin Yi had weren't very useful to Lin Yi, and Lin Yi didn't have the time to set up a stall here to trade with others. Exchanging it for money was the simplest way. And so Lin Yi said, then we'll put it up for auction first.
All right.
Han Xiaopa nodded and volunteered to lead the way. He knew more about the market than Lin Yi. Qiqi, on the other hand, was overjoyed. She wondered if she'd have a chance to steal the blue crystal when Lin Yi put it up for auction. Han Xiaopa brought Lin Yi away from the market and came to a secluded courtyard. At the entrance of the courtyard, There were law enforcement disciples patrolling the area. Who are you? What are you doing? This is the office of the Cultivator Trade Association. If there's nothing else, please leave. One of the disciples said to Lin Yi's group. Oh, we're here to put it up for auction. How do we go through the procedures? Han Xiaopa knew a lot about the cultivator market, but the hidden house Han didn't do business before. In order not to attract attention, they wouldn't come here to put it up for auction. So, Han Xiaopa only knew the general situation. Of course, you can put it up for auction.
Come with me.
The disciple nodded. It wasn't that there weren't any cultivators who came here to auction things, but there weren't many. Most cultivators prefer to set up stalls outside in the form of free trade. In this way, they could directly barter and see if there was anything they needed. However, the only thing they could get from the auction was money. But just because there were few didn't mean there weren't any. For example, the people from the hidden house you would often put up some pills for auction. After all, hidden houses needed a lot of money to operate. After entering the side courtyard, Lin Yi's group was led to a room. There was a man dressed like an ancient pawnshop who was arranging something. When he saw the law enforcement disciple bring people in, he asked directly, "Do you have something to put up for auction?" Here, Lin Yi didn't see the vice president of Heaven Stage. A vice president should be in charge here. He couldn't do these small things by himself. But this way, Lin Yi was relieved. He was afraid that the vice president would abuse his power for personal revenge and tamper with the auction price. Yes, I have some pills to put up for auction. Lin Yi nodded. As he said that, he took the backpack behind him, opened it, and placed several small bottles in front of the pawnshop man. Pills? The pawnshop man was surprised when he saw the things Lin Yi took out. Are you from the hidden house you?
No.
Lin Yi shook his head. Do you need to ask for the identity of the auctioneer when you auction here? That's not it. The pawnshop man shook his head embarrassedly and said, It's just that only the people from the hidden house you use to auction pills. You know that this cultivator's market is a small scale. Chapter 2482. But these elixirs of yours, small qi gathering pill, small circulation pill, meridian unblocking pill, and some spirit gathering pills, have been auctioned countless times. Because they were all supplied by the hidden house of you, the starting price is the same every time, and the final transaction price is about the same. There won't be much fluctuation. So, if you feel that you're losing money, you can choose to give up. The reason why the pawnbroker said so much was that he was afraid that the cost of Lin Yi's alchemy would be too high, and the final transaction price would be a loss. What is the general starting price and final transaction price? Lin Yi asked. There is a record here.
I'll find it for you to see.
The pawnbroker skillfully took out a list from a pile of documents and handed it to Lin Yi. Yang Qiqi, on the other hand, was quite surprised. Lin Yi had brought out so many pills to auction. He really was a man of goods. If it weren't for the fact that she really needed the blue crystal for little Jio's treatment, she would have asked for it all back. Lin Yi didn't have the time to guess Yang Qiqi's thoughts. He took the list from the pawnbroker and looked at it carefully. However, he sucked in a cold breath when he saw it. Seeing Lin Yi's subconscious shock, the pawnbroker smiled and said, The hidden house of you produces elixirs in bulk. Their price naturally has an advantage. If you don't think it's worth it, don't sell it. He was obviously doing it on purpose. The price on the list was too low in Lin Yi's eyes. However, he misunderstood. Lin Yi looked at the price on the list and sighed secretly. The profit of this elixir business was really huge. No wonder the hidden house of you didn't care about the medical business in the secular world. It couldn't be compared with this. Here, the transaction price of elixir was more than 10 million. It was a sky-high price. The 20 elixirs that Lin Yi brought were sold for more than 200 million. Where else could he find such a profitable business? Although the materials needed for these elixirs were precious, it was at most a few million. If Lin Yi had the time, he could ask Old Man Lin to plant some at home. It was just that he didn't have the time, so he asked for it from the Yu family. After all, the ingredients for these elixirs were not particularly rare. The cost of first-grade and second-grade elixirs was actually not high. The only good thing about it was that it was often unsuccessful. However, this price was still lower than the transaction value of the pill of life extension and toxin cleansing. Could it be that the pill of life extension and toxin cleansing was worth that much? Lin Yi was surprised that the Kong family would spare no effort to obtain the formula. They had the backing of the Hidden Yu family, and they were still concerned about the formula. It was enough to show how precious the formula was. However, Lin Yi did not find anything precious or strange about the formula. This price is fine. No problem. Lin Yi looked at the list. He said directly. Oh. The pawnbroker was a little shocked, but he didn't ask much and just nodded. All right, since that's the case, let's do the registration.
All right.
Lin Yi nodded. It didn't take long for the procedures to be completed. Lin Yi didn't use his real name, only an auction number. This number would be used to participate in the auction as well, but he'd gotten it earlier than the others. Yang Qiqi wasn't Yu Xiaoke. She had no chance to snatch the blue crystal from Lin Yi's bag in front of everyone. She couldn't find a suitable opportunity even after Lin Yi put on his bag. She could only give up for now. The group walked out of the courtyard, and Lin Yi noticed that Xiaoke was nearby. She seemed to be looking at a stall not far from them. She seemed to be looking at a stall not far away, but Lin Yi could see her eyes drifting over from time to time. He couldn't help but smile bitterly to himself. Yu Xiaoke's feelings were clear to Lin Yi. It was normal for her to be jealous after seeing him touching Yang Qiqi. However, Lin Yi didn't plan on letting Yang Qiqi go so easily. This girl was too irritating, biting the hand that fed her. Lin Yi punished her so that she would remember better in the future. Yang Qiqi saw that she couldn't stop Lin Yi from touching her, so she used her hands to touch Lin Yi. Of course, the main reason she touched Lin Yi was to steal the blue crystal from Lin Yi's backpack. Only with the blue crystal could she trade for the Earth Element Sky Class Spirit Beast Blood. Who was Yu Xiaoke? She knew Yang Qiqi's goal. She was a thief by birth. How could she not see that Yang Qiqi wanted to be a thief? Yu Xiaoke was a little annoyed. Why was this male thief so perverted? Was he smitten by this hot girl in front of him? He didn't even know what she was trying to do. In Yu Xiaoke's impression, this male thief was a very smart man. His intelligence and alertness in the tomb were both extraordinary. Plus, if he wanted to be perverted, he could have done it with herself. It wasn't like she wouldn't let him touch herself. Why would he touch a girl who had bad intentions towards him? It wasn't long before it was time for dinner. Lin Yi, Han Xiaope, and Qiqi arrived at the hotel in the market. You had to pay for your food here, but the rooms were free, provided by the Practitioner Trade Association. In fact, this place wasn't open to the public at all. Other than when the practitioners' market was being held, it was always closed. The facilities here were all built for the sake of the market. There weren't many practitioners eating in the restaurant. Since this place was open all days, there was no need for everyone to eat at this time. Plus, most of the practitioners would just buy things and eat in their rooms, not sitting here. Lin Yi randomly ordered a few dishes and sat down. Did you find what you wanted to trade?
I
don't have anything to trade. I'm just here to take a look. Qiqi quickly said. Haha. Lin Yi didn't say anything else. Qiqi's acting was too bad, and perhaps she was the only one who didn't know that she'd already exposed her true thoughts. Yu Xiaoke was in the restaurant as well. She was panicking. Could this male thief in front of her be an impersonator? Otherwise, the male thief didn't look like this. Could it be that the mask was fake? Seeing Qiqi fumbling around in Lin Yi's backpack, Yu Xiaoke panicked. What if this guy really was a male thief? And so, Xiaoke had no choice. She bought a box meal and sat beside Lin Yi's table. The most common food here was the bento box. In fact, these bento boxes were mostly given to the staff of the cultivator market and the law enforcement hall disciples for free. Very few cultivators would buy them. Practitioners weren't poor, so why would they buy a boxed meal? Someone like Yu Xiaoke, who lived frugally, was naturally different. Chapter 2483. Xiaoke's sudden arrival startled Qiqi, and she quickly retracted her hand that was rummaging through Lin Yi's backpack. She glared at Xiaoke, annoyed. What was wrong with this person? She didn't recognize them, and there were so many seats around them. Why did she have to sit next to them? Wasn't she just being annoying? But Xiaoka was already sitting next to them, and Chi-Chi couldn't just kick her out, could she? Helplessly, Chi-Chi could only give up and look for other opportunities. Ahem. Xiaoka turned her head to look at Lin Yi, and realized that Lin Yi didn't seem to notice her. She coughed twice. Chi-Chi was waiting for Xiaoka to sit down and eat, and she wanted to find a chance to make a move, but Xiaoka suddenly coughed twice, giving her fright. Her heart almost fell out of her chest, and she quickly retracted her hand. Lin Yi turned to Xiaoka helplessly, but Lin Yi didn't say anything after some hesitation. He knew that Xiaoka might have noticed something, but Lin Yi couldn't say anything in front of Chi-Chi. At that moment, Chi-Chi's phone rang. She took it out and looked at the caller ID. She quickly stood up and said to Lin Yi, "Young warrior, I'll go take this. Wait for me." With that, Chi-Chi walked quickly to a corner of the restaurant and carefully picked up the phone. With Chi-Chi gone, Xiaoka had some space to interact with Lin Yi. "Ha, it's me." Xiaoka lowered her voice and hinted to Lin Yi, "It's me." Lin Yi was speechless. He didn't want to acknowledge Xiaoka at first because he didn't want to drag her into this. It wasn't that he was avoiding her, but now that Xiaoka had taken the initiative, Lin Yi couldn't act like he didn't know her anymore. "Flying Sparrow, it's been a while," Lin Yi said. Chapter 2484. The elixir had been put up for auction, and Lin Yi's bottle was still with him. Lin Yi wouldn't be stupid enough to put it in his backpack as well. What if Chi-Chi decided to steal it too? Lin Yi would be in big trouble. After doing all that, Lin Yi sat cross-legged on his bed, channeling the second stage of the art of dragon mastery as he waited for Chi-Chi's arrival. He guessed that Chi-Chi wouldn't be able to resist coming to his room soon, looking for a chance to steal the blue crystal. As expected, Lin Yi heard a knock on the door not long after. "Who is it?" Lin Yi said with a smile as he walked over. "It's me." Chi-Chi tried to make her voice sound seductive. She didn't know how to seduce men, but she'd seen it in dramas before. It wasn't too strenuous for her to do it now, but it was a little embarrassing. Fortunately, her face was covered, and no one could see her face. Lin Yi opened the door and let Chi-Chi in. Chi-Chi closed the door after entering before turning to Lin Yi. "Young warrior, thank you so much for helping out today. I'd like to thank you in advance." Lin Yi was speechless. Which TV show did she see this way of speaking? But Lin Yi wasn't in the mood to tease her anymore. He only nodded. "It's nothing." Lin Yi's attitude towards her suddenly became a little cold, and Chi-Chi's heart jumped. Why did Lin Yi not like her anymore? Wasn't he touching her chest like a pervert before? Why was he so indifferent when she threw herself into his arms? This change made Chi-Chi's heart skip a beat. She didn't know what made Lin Yi like this, but since she was already here, she couldn't just give up. She had to get the blue crystal back. She gritted her teeth and hugged Lin Yi, falling into Lin Yi's embrace, but Chi-Chi was thinking to herself, "For little Jio's illness, I endured, but today's humiliation, I will return it tenfold. Just you wait, when I become powerful, the first thing I will take is your life." Lin Yi paused at Chi-Chi's sudden action, but understood the reason immediately. It was most likely because of his attitude. This conjecture. Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although Lin Yi had his hands on Chi-Chi earlier, he'd at least shown that he was interested in her. This made it easier for Chi-Chi to get close to him and steal the blue crystal. But if Lin Yi wasn't interested in Chi-Chi, then Chi-Chi wouldn't have the chance to steal the crystal. Lin Yi pushed Chi-Chi away helplessly. He knew that Chi-Chi must be grinding her teeth in anger, but he had to put on a fawning front. This girl's heart was still very strong, but it was also what Lin Yi admired the most. She was the same as Xiaoka, having her own beliefs and stubbornness. Xiaoka was willing to give up a lot for the children in the orphanage, and Chi-Chi was the same. She was willing to sacrifice herself for her friends. And so, Lin Yi really couldn't bear to take advantage of her. At least the current Chi-Chi made Lin Yi feel that she wasn't that bad, and she wasn't that selfish. It was reasonable for him to steal the blue crystal. Looking at it from another angle, If someone stole his chance to cure Xiao Xiao, Lin Yi would probably do the same. Haha, no rush. I'll go take a shower first. Lin Yi said this to create a chance for Chi-Chi to steal, letting her steal the blue crystal. Otherwise, with this cool girl's thieving skills, there was no chance of success at all. Lin Yi was already lax enough, but Xiaoke was different. The blue crystal was already in his hands. But Chi-Chi clearly wasn't an expert in this area, so Lin Yi went to take a shower and left her in the room to steal.
Ah.
Okay. Chi-Chi heard Lin Yi's words and was overjoyed. This guy really was a big pervert. He still wanted to take a shower? It was obvious what he would do after a shower. Humph, you deserve to lose your things. I'll steal the blue crystal after you take a shower. He, what a great opportunity. Chi-Chi, naturally, didn't know that Lin Yi was doing this on purpose. She didn't connect this person in front of her with the Lin Yi and Ling Yi from before. Lin Yi didn't say anything and walked into the bathroom. He locked the door and took off his clothes to take a shower. Chi-Chi heard the sound of water coming from the bathroom and was overjoyed. After a while, she made sure that Lin Yi was really taking a shower. Chi-Chi walked quickly to Lin Yi's backpack and started rummaging through it. The blue crystal was in Lin Yi's backpack. It wasn't hidden, so Chi-Chi saw it the moment she opened the backpack. Chi-Chi's hands were shaking as she carefully and quickly stole the blue crystal from Lin Yi's backpack. Her heart was racing. She had killed before, but she had no experience in stealing. Chi-Chi carefully put Lin Yi's backpack back to its original state and took a deep breath. She quickly put the blue crystal in her pocket. She didn't dare show it off in her hands. What if someone saw it and wanted to do something bad again? She'd be in big trouble. With that done, young Chi-Chi carefully made her way to the door. Xiaoke went back to her room and tidied up. She wanted to go to Lin Yi's room, but she didn't expect to see Chi-Chi sneaking into Lin Yi's room the moment she opened the door. At the same time, Xiaoke cursed Chi-Chi for being shameless. She really was a disgrace to the thief sections. She had to sacrifice her body to steal something. What a shame. Xiaoke didn't knock on the door right away. She didn't know what Lin Yi's goal was, and she was afraid that her appearance would interfere with Lin Yi's plans. So, she waited in the hallway for Chi-Chi to come out. If Chi-Chi succeeded, she'd help her steal the item. Xiaoke let out a sigh of relief when Chi-Chi opened the door not long after entering the room. She tiptoed out. Xiaoke knew that Lin Yi had a goal, but she wouldn't be happy if something really happened between Lin Yi and Chi-Chi. It wasn't that she was stingy, but it was reasonable, especially with a girl like Chi-Chi, who had a bad character. Xiaoke would be even more unhappy. Even if something happened, it should be with someone with high standards like her, right? And Chi-Chi came out not long after entering. Evidently, she didn't have time to do anything. Chapter 2485. Chi-Chi's clothes didn't look like anything had happened, either. Chi-Chi could open the door without making any noise, but closing it from the outside wouldn't be possible. She didn't lock the door, but left Lin Yi's door ajar as she tiptoed out of the room. But Chi-Chi saw Xiaoke walking towards her the moment she stepped out of the door. She jumped in fright and almost tripped. She didn't dare to look at Xiaoke straight in the eyes and quickly ran back to her room. How could Xiaoke not see the guilt in Chi-Chi's eyes? It seemed that she had stolen something. There was no way Xiaoke would let her take it away so easily. So when Chi-Chi walked past with her head lowered, Xiaoke consciously brushed past her and bumped into her. Chi-Chi felt guilty and wanted to go back to her room as soon as possible, so naturally, she didn't want to talk to Xiaoke. Even if she knew that Xiaoke bumped into her on purpose, she could only accept it with a guilty conscience. Xiaoke pushed open Lin Yi's door and walked in, only to find that there was no one there. At the same time, she heard the sound of water coming from the washroom. Xiaoke understood now that Lin Yi was showering, and Chi-Chi must have used this time to steal something. As for why Lin Yi went to shower, that was obvious. Chi-Chi must have seduced Lin Yi and made him shower, and Chi-Chi used this time to steal something. Otherwise, with her skills, she wouldn't have been able to win against Lin Yi at all. At that thought, Xiaoke was even more troubled. The male thief was such a big pervert, taking the bait with just a little seduction, and even going to take a bath like an idiot. If she didn't notice that something was wrong and stole the item back, he'd have lost a lot. Xiaoka thought. Xiaoka sat on the sofa, waiting for Lin Yi to come out after his shower. He suddenly felt expected. What was going to happen between Chi-Chi and Lin Yi in the shower? Now that young Chi-Chi wasn't here, and she was in Lin Yi's room, would something happen between her and Lin Yi? With that thought, Xiaoka got nervous. If Lin Yi wanted to push her down, would she agree or not? Or agree? Just when Xiaoka was panicking, the washroom door opened and Lin Yi walked out wearing a nightgown. He wasn't wearing the male thief mask, but the 1,000 silk mask that the heaven-class spider gave him. In the washroom, Lin Yi had heard the sound of Chi-Chi leaving. Chi-Chi had made it very quiet, but how could she hide it from an Earth-class mid-phase peak like Lin Yi? Lin Yi also knew that Xiaoka had come in. This was also the reason why Lin Yi didn't come out after showering. He recognized Xiaoka's footsteps and knew that she was safe in her room. As for not wearing the mask, Lin Yi was too lazy to wear it, and Xiaoka had tried to take it off many times, so he decided that he might as well take it off himself. He still had the 1,000 silk mask on, so Lin Yi wasn't worried that Xiaoka would recognize him. "Xiaoka, you're here? Is she gone already?" Lin Yi wiped his hair with a towel as he looked at Xiaoka on the sofa and asked calmly.
Huh?
"You knew she was gone?" Xiaoka paused for a second before answering. She realized that Lin Yi wasn't wearing the mask this time, and she was surprised and happy. She even forgot about Chi-Chi and stood up. "Male thief, is this your real face? You're finally willing to take off your mask in front of me. I'm so happy."
Haha, Anne.
Lin Yi smiled. "How is it? Are you disappointed?" With the 1,000 silk mask on his face, Lin Yi looked like a normal person. He didn't have the handsomeness he used to have, and he gave off the feeling that you wouldn't be able to find him in a crowd. This was the effect that the 1,000 silk mask was supposed to have. If it was too obvious, then the mask would be a failure. "Nope." Xiaoka shook her head heavily. "What you look like isn't important. What I like is the person who protected me carefully in the tomb. Plus, your looks aren't that outstanding, but in my eyes, you're perfect." Lin Yi paused. He didn't think that Xiaoka would reveal her feelings so boldly again. He didn't know how to reply to this. "I'll go take a shower." Although that annoying girl left, there's still me, Xiaoka said to Lin Yi bravely.
That.
"Xiaoka, it's okay, you misunderstood." Lin Yi jumped. He was a little moved, but how could he do anything with Xiaoka in this place? He quickly waved his hand to stop her. "I suggested taking a shower. The goal was to create a chance for her to steal the blue crystal."
Ah.
You let her steal it on purpose?" Xiaoka's eyes widened in shock, not understanding why Lin Yi would do this. "Xiaoka, sit down first. I'll tell you the details." Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Actually, she's a pitiful person. She had her own persistence, willing to compromise.
Oh.
Xiaoka wasn't too happy hearing Lin Yi's high evaluation of Yang Chi-Chi, but she still sat down obediently. "Actually, the truth is like this. The thing she stole was hers, and I just took it from someone else's hands." With that, Lin Yi told Xiaoka about what happened at the practitioner's market. So that's how it is. Xiaoka realized after listening to Lin Yi's story, it really was Yang Chi-Chi's. But Xiaoka was still a little unsatisfied. Although it was hers, she was useless, and someone stole it. You stole it from the person who stole it, so it's yours. Why does she have to steal it back? That's what I thought before. I thought that she was biting the hand that fed her. I helped her get back a small chi-gathering pill, so she should be satisfied. Otherwise, she wouldn't get anything. Lin Yi nodded. So, when she threw herself at me, I used that as an excuse to tease her. But later, in the restaurant, I heard a phone call from her and I changed my mind. Lin Yi then told Xiaoka about the phone call. Xiaoka couldn't help but fall silent. Indeed, if what Lin Yi said was true, then Yang Chi-Chi and herself were quite similar in some aspects. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.